All right, I didn't even have to say anything. Everyone started quieting down right at 7 o'clock. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm calling this the December 7th City Council meeting to order. I'll ask the the city clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Constantine.
Here.
Councilmember Spring.
Here.
Borgioli. Martinez Beltran. McKay.
Here. All right, and could you please declare the posting of tonight's agenda?
Tonight's meeting agenda was duly noticed and posted in accordance with Government Code 54954.2.
Thank you very much. And could you please stand and join me in a silent invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And we have no recognitions or proclamations or presentations, so it's just up to the city council reports. And tonight it is my turn to give a report. One of the many committees that I stand on is VTA and Caltrain. And the reason why I bring that up is because in 2016, the voters of Morgan Hill overwhelmingly supported Measure B, which is a transportation measure that funded not only our Hale Avenue extension, but also was supposed to fund our fourth train on Caltrain. Now, some of you who commute on Caltrain are aware that because of COVID, we've had a lack of, shall I say, normal service, but we're returning to that now. However, we still have not gotten our fourth train. Now, our partners at VTA helped us have a meeting with representatives from the city of Morgan Hill and Gilroy and Caltrain to discuss where we are and when we can expect to have a fourth train. Those meetings went very fruitful, and we will be continuing to have those meetings. In fact, every month, the first Tuesday before the VTA board meeting, we have a South County meeting where representatives, the mayor of Gilroy, the mayor of Morgan Hill, and other representatives from both cities and VTA meet. Well, now Caltrain will be in on those meetings every month as well. So we'll be getting updates on that. So more to come on that, but we're going to keep our fingers crossed. But they keep saying that the reason why we don't have a fourth train is because we don't have enough ridership. But that was never the issue. It was promised to us in Measure B in 2016. So we are hopeful, and we have been having a very good, as I said, fruitful meetings with Caltrain, and I hope those continue. There's one more thing on VTA. I can't remember what it was now. It may come back to me. I want to remind everyone, I'm also on the Valley Water Commission, and even though it is raining cats and dogs, we have to remember last year at this time it was raining quite a bit, and then in January the spigot turned off, and we started I think it's our third or fourth year of a severe drought. So I want to remind everyone to please continue to conserve water. The residents of Morgan Hill have always done a fantastic job, and they have been continuing to do so. I want to remind everyone that if you can, turn off your irrigation. It's been raining so much, I've turned off my irrigation. But if you do have your irrigation on, please don't water when it's raining. And remember, you can only water your plants and lawns on Wednesdays. And with that, I will end my report. And I will look to the city manager, Ms. Christina Turner, if she has a report for us this evening.
Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the community, and my teammates that are here. 3 items for you this evening. Michelle, our city clerk, is going to pull up a listing of our service awards that we were able to celebrate last week. And so these are service milestones that have been achieved by our teammates, including 5, 10, 15, and 25 years of dedicated service to Team Morgan Hill. So it was my extreme pleasure to talk about these teammates and have their supervisors talk about them and honor them. We're extremely blessed by the work and the years that our teammates have dedicated to help make Morgan Hill the best community for people to live, work, visit, and operate their businesses. Thanks for pulling that up, Michelle. Two additional items that I wanted to announce. The first is that our police department is working in conjunction with several other entities in an anonymous gun buyback event. And so that's going to be held this Saturday, December 10th from 9 to 2. This is going to be at an outdoor sports center on Condit Road, and cash will be given for handguns, rifles, shotguns, ghost guns, and assault weapons. All guns must be unloaded and transported in the trunk of the seller's car. Funds are limited to first come, first served until the funds run out. And so basically what this is for people that have guns that have and no longer want them. No questions are asked. It's really to get guns out of the hands of those that shouldn't have guns and to prevent accidents and so forth. And then lastly, I want to invite everyone to join us a week from today at 7:00 right here in the council chamber for a special city council meeting. We will have the certification of the election results. In addition to that, it will be an opportunity to say farewell to our departing elected officials and welcome our newly elected and re-elected official. And with that, I conclude my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Turner. And with that, I also want to recognize that we have Mayor-elect Turner in the audience, as well as Councilmember-elect Marilyn Lieber. So welcome. And I'm going to ask the city attorney who is visiting us via Zoom if he has a has a report for us this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a meeting, and that's why I am attending the meeting from South San Francisco. Tomorrow is the planned JPA Board of Directors meeting. Starts at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, but because it hasn't started yet, I will report on that next meeting. And that's my report.
Great. Well, thank you very much. All right. This moves us to public comment. This is an opportunity for public comment. For items not on tonight's agenda. If you would like to make comments on an item that is on the agenda, please wait until we get to that item to offer your comments. Members of the public are entitled to address. What I do? Oh, I suppose you have another report. Okay, my colleague just reminded me that I skipped other reports. Do any of my colleagues have any other reports they'd like to? I appreciate that. No, thank you. You did the right thing.
Thank you, Renee. I almost forgot. I just wanted to announce that this Sunday on the 11th, we will have our third annual holiday posada at the Community Cultural Center. It will be from 4 to 10 p.m. We'll have food. We'll have a mariachi trio. We'll have a DJ, giveaways for the kids and food. I hope that everybody will come out and enjoy it. It's really a warm feeling that you're left with in your heart. Thanks so much. And thank you to everybody for the support and community support.
And Councilmember Katie, do you have a report as well?
Yeah, it's a bit of a report, and that is that I was in attendance of Giorgio's restaurant ribbon cutting today. I want to say that it's I believe it's one of our wonderful restaurants now that has family style offerings. And what I'd like to do is encourage our community to support our restaurants through the holiday period. And then also, please keep in mind that the slowest months for our restaurants and our businesses in general are January and February. So I hope that we as a community can go out and support those businesses that support us year round. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I unfortunately missed the grand opening or the ribbon cutting because I was chairing the LAFCO meeting at the same time, unfortunately. So I left off with the public comment. Members of the public are entitled to address the city council concerning any item within the Morgan Hill City Council subject matter jurisdiction. Public comments are limited to no more than 3 minutes. Except for certain specific exceptions, the city council is prohibited from discussing or taking action on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Public comment is intended for comments. Questions posed during public comments are not generally answered. If you have questions, please send them to the city clerk at ccpubliccomment, that's all one word, at morganhill.ca.gov to receive a response. And I'll ask if there's any members of the audience that wish to address us on items not on today's agenda or items that are on the agenda, please go to the back. I believe over there by the board, Deputy City Clerk Gonzalez will be there with speaker cards. Please fill those out. So that's how we get to know who we're going to be calling up for the next item. So with that, I'm going to look to see, do we have any speaker cards?
Yes, Ben Palm.
Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good to be here tonight, City Council, Mayor Constantine, and members of the public. My name is Ben Palm. I'm a pastor at Morgan Hill Bible Church, and I'm also a chaplain for the Morgan Hill Police Department. And just wanted to come tonight and just take an opportunity to pray. I'm also 6'9", which is why the microphone is pointing at my belly. But I just wanted to take an opportunity in a moment just to pray for you all and for our city. Lord, today we are thankful. We're thankful for the many ways that you bless us and the great gifts that you give. Sometimes when life is down, it's hard to focus on the good and the ways that you've blessed us. But you are a good God, and you are always faithful and always blessing us in ways that if we take time and look, we can see those. So we're thankful for this evening. We're thankful for the opportunity to be together. I do just pray for this city council, God leading our city, that you would give them wisdom, that you would help them to work together, that you would give them understanding and as they work together, and just that they would listen well and work well. I want to pray specifically just a blessing over Mayor Constantine and John McKay, just for their faithful service, God, and just that they would feel blessed and honored next week, Lord, as their time in their seats runs out, that Lord, just that they would leave with smiles on their faces and just looking back over the wonderful things that they've done. We pray also for those in our city, our public servants, God, our firefighters, our police officers, those that are on the front lines, caring for our city and caring for our people. Would you protect them and would you care for them well? And Lord, as we just enter into what is oftentimes a challenging season for some, just remembering loss and feeling alone, God, would you just give people peace? Would you give them peace that surpasses all understanding, and just allow this to be a season for them to celebrate? Would you give them someone just to come alongside them and put their arms around them? Lord, we're thankful just for this opportunity to be together, and would you continue to bless this city council and the work that they do. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers?
I have no other speakers in the room, and I am not seeing any hands go up on Zoom. For those folks participating on Zoom, if you're on your phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand.
Okay, and with that, I will go ahead and close public comment and move up to adoption of tonight's agenda. So moved. Okay, we have a motion in multiple seconds to pass the agenda. May I have no, I don't have to have a roll call anymore. I'm used to doing that. I did that today. So, okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries unanimously. We will now move to the consent calendar. We have 18 items on our consent calendar. Items appearing on the consent calendar are considered routine and may be approved by one motion pursuant to city council policies and procedures. Any member of the council or public may request to have an item removed from the consent calendar for comment and action. I'll ask my colleagues, are there any items they wish to remove from the consent calendar? Councilmember Martinez Beltran?
Number 3 of a comment, number 4 and 18, I'd like to pull.
Okay, so 1, 3,
4, 18.
4, and 18. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, any members of the public? Any speaker cards?
I have no cards for this item.
Okay, and anyone on Zoom?
No hands are up.
Okay, Don, Mr. Larkin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mayor.
Question regarding if just comments, can we still pass the other items that the council member wants to make a comment on and then have them make a comment on those items, or should we still pull them?
I would defer to Councilmember Martinez Beltran. If she just wants to make a comment after the vote, that's appropriate. If she has a comment that she needs to make before the vote, then they should be pulled.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Martinez Beltran?
I'm happy to make just a comment on number 3. So I'll just leave 1, 4, and 18, if that's okay.
Yes, but we can pull them off if you want them all.
I don't need to pull 3.
Okay, so we won't put three, so we're gonna put items 1, 4, and 18.
Please.
Okay, then can I have a motion to pass all the remaining items? So
Okay.
motion in a second by Councilmember Martinez Beltran. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried unanimously. We will start with. Okay, I'm sorry. I took these notes. You don't want 3, correct?
No,
Okay, so we'll start with item 1, which is to accept the city's annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022.
yes.
You just want to make a comment on that one?
Yeah, I just really wanted to ask one question. I just wanted to see if we could get a highlight within this on where we are with recreation and how it's trending.
Good evening, council members, good evening, Mayor, Wayne, Finance Director. I'm sorry, did you ask for a presentation or?
I don't need a presentation. I just wanted to see if you could highlight where we are with recreation and how it's trending.
Right, so what you have is this item number 1 is the audit financial report, which the city go through every year. To wrap up the recently completed fiscal year June 30, 2022. So overall, just the some highlights, we end up quite much better than we had planned for forecast for at the last adopted budget. Based on the numbers, I believe the revenue came in about $1.6 million more than we had planned. And on the expenditure side, we have about $4 million better than we had forecasted. So overall, the general fund balance increased by $5.9 million. And for development services, with 406.
And Dan, may I just jump in? Councilwoman, I think your question is really just around recreation. Yeah, so Councilwoman Yvonne Martinez Beltran is just asking about the trends on recreation. And so if you could just kind of talk about how we're seeing memberships go back up while it's going slowly, we're still seeing trends up. That's where her questions lie.
So for recreation, as of June 30, I think for the last fiscal year, if we talk about last fiscal year and you want to talk about current fiscal year, we have another item coming up, which is number 22. I can present to you. But overall for last year, the net is that we end up better, even though the revenue came in below than we had planned or forecasted. But the offset is that we had a larger reduction in expenditures. So the net is we came out better than we had planned.
Okay, but I guess my point is that part of that is not necessarily because of the revenues, but maybe of the savings that we've been doing the team has been doing such a good job with.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, do any of my colleagues have any questions? Seeing none, I'll open it for public comment. Are there any members of the public wishing to address us on this item? Do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Okay, I don't see anybody coming up. Anybody on Zoom?
No.
All right, so I'll now open it up for discussion or action.
And Mayor,
I'd like to move to.
Oh,
I was just gonna say there's
Mr.
no,
Larkin.
this is just to accept, so there's no action on this item.
Okay, perfect. We'll move on to now item number 4, which is adopted ordinance number 2339, new series approving a zoning map amendment for a mixed-use downtown plan development combining district on a 1.09 acre site located east of Monterey between First and Second Street. You have a question on this one as well?
I'd like to have a presentation on this, Mayor, and then I do have some questions, please.
Okay.
I'm hearing that we want to do a presentation on this item. Okay, great. So we do have Matt Mayhood that is on. And so can we make sure he can come over as a panelist? Thank you. And so we have
I'm over. and
Economic
I'm
Development Director.
I'm over and I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. And so, Mr. Mayhood, if you could please present a report on this item, and then we'll have the mayor open it up for any questions.
Great, thank you. So this item is the second reading of the PD and the ordinance that was passed just 2 weeks ago on November 16th. So this item is your second reading on the ordinance 2339. which allows for a partial fifth floor at the Granada Hotel, allowing the developer to build an additional 11 rooms on the partial fifth floor. And he's also converting two other, the gym facility into two other rooms. So it's a total of 13 additional rooms. There were some other slight modifications within the development, but this was approved by the city council back on November 16th. And the second piece on this item is the MOU, part of the ordinance and part of the PD that was passed by the city council, directed the city manager and the city attorney to negotiate an MOU with the developer. And that is attached to this item for your review. A couple key components within that memorandum of understanding is we took the performance standards that were included in the PD, and then we laid them out within the MOU. We provided for the exceptions under the terms of the PD ordinance. A one-time 2-year administrative time extension to the performance standard may be granted by the development services director. As long as the developer is proceeding in good faith and is exercising due diligence, he should be achieving his performance standards in a timely manner. However, if he provides proof to the city that he is unable to achieve the performance standards due to circumstances outside of his control or their control, that he may be provided a 2-year time extension. It is important to note that if the developer acknowledges the delayed performance and it's outside, it's within his control, and we did put 2 significant items in there, that if the developer does not complete the exterior facade within 24 months after construction, liquidated damages are $100 per day until the exterior facade is complete. And the second item is that if the developer does not achieve hotel room operations by the date required in the PD, which is December 31, 2025, that the developer would be responsible for reimbursing the city for 50% of the uncollected TOT tax, the transit occupancy tax, after the required completion date, until which time the hotel is operating and collecting TOT. And in the MOU, we gave an example of how that TOT would be calculated. There is a force majeure within the agreement that if non-performance is caused by conditions outside of his control, and those must be documented and presented to the city, and those items are reasonable and provides timely and reasonable notice of that condition, the city could waive those liquidated damages. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayhood. Do you have any questions, Councilmember?
I do, Mayor. Well, thank you very much, Matt, for getting that. I appreciate that. I wanted to ask I'm reading through this. It says the adequate transportation facilities, infrastructure, and public services exist or will be provided to serve the proposed development. Could you explain what is adequate what is that? What does that mean?
I might need to phone a friend on this one and ask that our development services director, Jennifer Carmen, perhaps help provide that definition if she's available.
And Ms. Carmen is coming up to the podium right now. You only get one phone a friend though, Mr. Mayhood.
That's okay. I have other tools at my disposal.
I do have multiple friends here tonight, so I believe the question is regarding one of the findings in the ordinance. Is that?
It's a part of the ordinance, section 8, from page 2 of 9. Adequate transportation facilities, infrastructure, and public services exist or will be provided to serve the proposed development.
So that is a typical finding, that there's streets infrastructure services, sewer, water, all of those things are there,
Okay.
and can serve what is being proposed on site.
Okay, so this doesn't include parking or any of that?
No.
Okay. Okay, that was what I was getting at. Thank you. As far as the parking, is there any other what is typically required for a hotel for parking?
Well, it's interesting. There is a new law coming in January 1.
Okay.
Cities are no longer able to require parking within a half mile of the transit station.
For which development?
Any use.
Okay,
So
but that's in January.
it's in January, correct?
Okay.
I would have to pull the original CUP that discussed parking for the hotel originally. But I do recall that the applicant intended to do it all by valet. And so you actually end up with a much more efficient parking field when you're valet parking rather than having individual spots.
Okay, so the plan is to accommodate the parking with valet. All right. Talking about the valet, that's part of the public benefit, and I want to go back to the public benefit because is this charged? Is the valet, do we charge for the valet?
So yes, it would be part, but typically valet is provided to the users of the facility. The public benefit is he would extend that use to anyone who would like to use it. You would still pay, but you could valet park at the hotel regardless of where you're going in downtown.
Okay. So this was one of the things that I wanted to ask about because as a public benefit, it seems to me that a public benefit should benefit all of our residents equally. If you're paying for valet, many people are not going to be able to pay for the cost of valet and then also for a tip. So that leaves a big cushion.
If I could, asking whether or not the owner of the facility charges for the valet or not charges for the valet, that is not subject to this item. So I'm going to ask you to keep your questions specific to this item specifically.
Okay, so then I'd like for the city attorney to tell me what is, because we're approving the ordinance. We had lots of discussion on this at the very end. There was, that kind of just unraveled. But if you could explain to me what I am able to ask, I've got a number of questions that I'd like to be answered.
I mean, council member, you can, as a reminder, this was an item that was approved by the council on at your November 16th meeting. Certainly, if there are new issues, you can ask those as it applies to the second reading, and particularly the MOU, which you didn't have at the last meeting. But it is this is really a ministerial at this point, unless there's new information that's come to light. Adoption of
I don't think we discussed the details of the public benefit, and going in the MOU, I think the city should ask that for something to be, I mean, if it's a public benefit, it's only benefiting a few. I don't understand how that's a public benefit.
Yeah,
But Councilmember, as the city attorney just mentioned, that was already discussed when this came before the council and we approved it. So if you have any,
But I would argue, Mary, it was not discussed. We were told what was being proposed as the public benefit. We did not discuss the details of what the benefit was or who it was benefiting.
and as the city attorney mentioned, that has already been passed. So talking about those specific items is really moot, but if you have anything that is new in regarding specifically the MOU that was just brought, that was not brought to our attention, if you have any questions regarding that, that would be germane to this item.
And I just to explain, because the applicant has a right to address all of those questions. So if there were 3 votes on the council to reopen the public hearing and revisit the first reading, then the council could do that and give the applicant a chance to respond to that. But otherwise, on a second reading, the public hearing is over.
Well, I think it's interesting as well. We're moving to a new council in 7 days. So this affects not only this sitting council, but also our new council members who are here today, looking at what all of these details. So I think it should be something included in the MOU. We are discussing the MOU. going to move away from that. I think I've, you know, expressed my disapproval with that. I would like to understand what is a timely manner on things that are out of their control. Can you please define those?
I think that's that would be a reasonable time, things that are out of their control. You know, obviously it's going to depend on the situation. If there's a major storm that knocks over, you know, buildings in Morgan Hill, then that's not something that we need a lot of time. We'll know about that. If there's an earthquake, we'll know about that. If there's something else, something in the, you know, for example, supply chain issues that we had last year are things that the city might not be aware of, inability to get materials. And so those are the kinds of things that we should be informed of as soon as the applicant is aware of them. And that's what we mean by timely manner. It's going to depend on the circumstances, what's timely, but it's all based on a reasonableness standard.
Okay. We also talk about the height in here, and that was something that we've been asked for an additional floor. Then we were asked on top of that for additional height. And as it is now, Jennifer, we do remain with the control to limit the height, correct?
The height increase was granted as part of that, the additional floor. And that is why the PD or the plan development tool was actually used for this, because to extend the height above the maximum that's allowed under the downtown specific plan, it needs to be done via PD.
Okay, but we had talked about that maybe 60 would work, 65, but it's almost like an open height here. So I'm wondering if that's something that we are able to control. Is that not something we could put in the MOU? It's one of the last things we have any local control over is our height.
The PD currently was approved with a maximum building height of 70 feet, with the exception for building rooftop equipment, elevator shaft, stair shaft, that type of thing. That was part of the approved PD.
Okay, so it's 70 feet including that.
No, those are additional.
That's what I'm saying.
Just like with every building.
So we're going beyond 70 feet plus the fifth floor that we've, the fifth floor was a concession. Plus 70 feet is a concession. I guess what I'm saying is that is still something that we do have local control over, is the height of our buildings. Is that true?
As far as determining what the maximum building height would be?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So if we do allow a 70-foot building, then that would be a precursor for others. This might be something they would also be able to do, I would imagine.
Not necessarily. This was a legislative approval of the plan development. So it's not like issuing a CUP for a height exception. I would defer to our city attorney, but precedent standard is a little bit different with the legislative approval. I don't know if the city attorney would like to respond.
Yeah, yeah, and the height is again something that was in the PD ordinance that council approved on November 16th. So it's not something that would go into the MOU. The MOU can't amend the ordinance. All it does is talk about what the liquidated damages are if the developer doesn't comply with the ordinance. But in terms of the height, it doesn't set a precedent because every PD ordinance is judged on its own merit based on the project and the usefulness of the project and the benefits of the project to the community.
I mean, I find it interesting. We talk a lot on this dais about local control. This is one of the things we do have local control over. I'm not saying that we should not allow him to use the height that he needs, but to put a concession for a fifth floor and then give an open concession on the height, I think is a mistake on that part. So if that's something.
And the council absolutely has control over the height, and the council made the decision to allow the exception for the height to go higher at the last council meeting. it wasn't that was completely in council's discretion on November 16th.
Yes, I'm aware. Thank you.
The height is also attached to the performance standards and can be reduced should the
Yes, I did
performance standards
catch
not be
that.
met.
And I do very much appreciate that. But again, I think that that's something that we talk a lot about local control. I also wanted to ask about the completion date in the original contract. We were not able to nudge things, come to find out that there was actually no completion date in that original contract that was made. I think we need to learn from that mistake. So we had talked about last time having extensions considered by the council rather than an administrative. And I would like to, look at that again. I know that staff said they were going to go back. They were going to review the MOU and talk about that. We were moving towards that. Then we had a change. So, what is the situation now for the future? How is it that we're to protect ourselves from the past reoccurring if we don't have any way to check when we're giving extensions? I see that there's up to 2 to 3 extensions that can be allowed. 3 2-year extensions.
So the code does provide for extensions, and that is what is noted in the MOU. I have the authority, and I'm reading from the code. The director may approve extensions to a permit in the following manner. May approve up to 2 2-year extensions. The applicant needs to submit a written request for the extension of time. They also need to demonstrate that they have been proceeding in good faith and has exercised due diligence and effort to exercise the permit in a timely manner. There is a burden of proof is on the applicant to demonstrate that the permit should be extended. And the director may choose to refer any extension of a time request to planning commission for review and final decision.
Okay, who makes that decision? Is that yourself? Is that
Right? Yes.
okay? Look, I like Mr. Leal. I think, he's talented, he's funny, he's many things, but this is not about that. I'm trying to figure out how we position ourselves to be in a different situation in the future going forward. And if things fall apart, not staff, but those of us who are here on this council and those who will join our council next week will be holding the bag. And so why would we not put a reasonable stopgap in the MOU? That's the question that I'm stuck with. I'm not saying we wouldn't give an extension. I'm not saying we wouldn't give consideration. I'm just saying, why wouldn't we put a stopgap?
And that'll be your last question, Councilmember.
Thank you.
Does anyone want to take a stab at that?
Is that's I was sorry, I thought it was a rhetorical question.
Was it a rhetorical question, Councilmember?
No.
I mean, that was something that you, as a council, discussed at the November 16th meeting, and I do recall, Councilmember Martinez Beltran, that you made that motion, but that was not the motion that ended up being passed. That's a council decision to make, but the council made that decision.
I understand, but not everybody on this council will be left to be held responsible for that.
Councilmember.
Is that an option for the future council?
Thank you, Councilmember. Now I will go ahead and ask if there's any members of the public wishing to address us on this item. Actually, first, before is any other members of my colleagues want to ask a question? Okay, don't see any. No, okay. Yeah, are there any members of the public, any speaker cards on this item? Okay.
Yes. Baranowski, and at this moment, I have no hands up on Zoom. Thank you.
Yes, good evening. My name is Joe Baranowski. I've been a resident in Morgan Hill for 21 years. It's a bad idea to do an MOU as part of a fundamental agreement after a vote. It really is. So I appreciate the questions that the council member was asking. There's a mysterious questioner that supplemented this. I'm really my comments are directed at the person. So I'm giving this developer 10 months to resume construction, 24 months to complete the exterior, with the possibility of getting a 2-year extension. And then the MOU comes back at $100 penalty potentially. And somebody was wondering, how do we be more amicable? And the city's answer was, reasonable. It said that, well, this is in the city's best interest. I'm wondering what seminar tells you, where's the concept of public interest in these decisions? That's for most. This developer isn't sitting downtown out in some kind of bubble. That's for most businesses in the area. That's for the people who live right behind that building and have had an open bar for a couple of years. People who have lived downtown for 15 years and have noise coming out of this. It's one thing to give a developer a second chance because of some circumstances. What about the developers we heard call in 2 weeks ago who were asking, where's the fairness of their issues? But again, I hope that a new council starts focusing on best for most. Because we like somebody, I think we've bent over backwards. We've been very amicable. And I wish that we would consider other parties that are involved in these decisions, not just one person. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Piranowski. Are there any speakers?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Then we'll go ahead and there's still nobody on Zoom?
Correct.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and close public comment and I'll open it up for discussion or action from my colleagues. Mr. Spring.
Just a brief comment, like it was mentioned, we did discuss that extensively 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I also had asked that we would get insight into the MOU earlier, before it gets added as a decision. That obviously didn't happen, so I am displeased with that part myself, and maybe that's a process question we have to discuss and maybe improve down the road. But I was on the losing side last time, and I will continue to voting no today as well, just as I did 2 weeks ago, just in case you're wondering, why does he vote no?
All right. Councilmember McKay.
Well, I guess I feel like I do understand what was in the MOU and what was in our PD agreement last meeting, and that is it did put restrictions on. If timelines weren't met, additional height, and basically it's really based on the height at this point, and time extension was very clear that if there was no performance, then they would lose those advantages. So to me, I'm comfortable with that, but knowing that there's no person here that wants to get it done more than the applicant. And I do believe that there will be a benefit to our community in the long run. And you can certainly reach out to me in a couple of years if it doesn't turn out that way. I'll always be available. So with that, what I'd like to do is approve.
Would you like to make a motion to waive the reading and adopt the ordinance?
Yeah, I'm trying to read right here. Yes, that's my motion. Thank you.
Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Is this a discussion on the motion?
No.
Then this was for discussion on the motion.
Oh, yes. Sorry. It's a no, yes.
Okay. Then you may go ahead.
I was reading this as I was talking. Yes, I would ask again, I think, John, you made the motion. I would ask that we have review by the city council for any extensions. And I am not trying to, be argumentative. I really do think it is in the best interest of the community that it come here.
and that we look and review it. That's what we had discussed last time. You had a substitute motion that you wanted to just put it through with staff and have that be an administrative decision. And I really think that that is something that we need to have transparency, and we need to allow the community with something that is so tense. And two of our council members leading this dais, to leave us, in this position where we have no oversight. So I would ask for you to consider doing that. And, again, I'm not trying to be argumentative with you. I'm not trying to undermine you. I really do believe this is the best.
Would the motioner like to amend his motion?
May I ask the council, Attorney Larkin, if we can even do that at this point?
If it's a minor amendment that was discussed at the last meeting, then, and that would be a minor amendment, then yes, if the council wanted to make that amendment, it could. It would just be changing director to city council.
Yeah, I would like to elaborate on why I don't feel it's appropriate, if I could. And that is that for some reason, when businesses come before this council, some members of this council, it becomes basically a bashing fest. And I don't think that's fair to our business community. What I'd like to do is say that I would like to have that come back in the event of an extension, so that the community knows that an extension is about to take place and that there can be public comment. But I really, I fear that I'll just see a rerun of what we've seen in the past, which is abusive.
I understand. Just for clarification, I believe that was discussed, that if there is an extension, did we vote that it had to come back to council for an extension, or did we were talking about that? I was in Hawaii, so I don't really remember that too much other than the beach. So
my motion, I would amend it to include bringing it back, just to present it to the public. But I would like to limit the council's action at that point to just simply understanding what the conditions are and accepting a report.
So I'm looking at Mr. Larkin to see if we can do that.
I don't think that's something that could be amended in the PD ordinance, but if that was added as direction to the city manager, I think that would get, could be included in the minutes as direction to the city manager to bring any extension back.
And let me ask a clarifying question. Are you asking for it just to come back as an informational item that extension has been granted?
Yeah.
No action required by city council. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Ms. Ramirez, did you have any questions or? Okay.
That would be, okay, that was a modification to my.
Thank you, Mr.
So Mayor, I would say that does not satisfy my request, but on the losing end, you take what you can get.
Okay. With that, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No.
Nay.
Okay, that motion carries with Councilmember Spring and Councilmember Martinez Beltran voting in the negative. That now moves us to item 18 on the consent calendar. And item 18 is to delegate the authority to the city manager to accept donations from Shoe Palace. Mr. Nguyen.
Good evening again.
And I just want to clarify, you wanted a report, that's correct? Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Nguyen, please go ahead.
Good evening to Mayor and council members. Back Nguyen, Finance Director. The item here tonight is to ask for your authority to grant to our city manager the delegation authority to accept donation from Shoe Palace, 5,000 or more, and direct her to report back to the council and public in the quarterly financial report. So basically, Shoe Palace has approached city, and they have make intention known that they would like to make donations year round, whether it's for certain programs, sponsoring certain programs, or any items that our public safety department, either fire, police, or public service department that interested in or need. They would either give us money or purchase for us. So basically, again, as the staff report indicated, we're just asking the council current policies that we have to, the council would accept any donation over 5,000. since we expect that this could be numerous donations or times that the Sioux Palace potentially donate or give to us, that we ask the council grant the authority to the delegation authority to the city manager to accept donations and report back to city council in a quarterly basis.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. Are there any questions for Mr. Nguyen? I will go to Councilman Martinez Beltran first and then Councilmember Spring.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dat. I wanted to just ask if we've had conversation with Sioux Palace. I didn't see in here, their interest. Do they have any particular interest in if they've expressed where they would like to do those donations? The areas, I know that this is for public safety, but have they expressed maybe a plethora of areas that they're interested in?
Yeah, if I can go ahead and respond to that, and I'll give a little bit more background on Sioux Palace for the benefit of the council and the community. So they're located in Morgan Hill and they employ hundreds of local residents and their headquarters are here. Recently, they were bought by JD Sports and JD Sports is a global retailer. It's the parent company of Sioux Palace. Sioux Palace is a brand that was created in the Bay Area with roots in San Jose, and they have a large presence now in Morgan Hill. They're known for their investment in various communities throughout California and outside of California. And while they don't have a store here, their headquarters are here. And so they now really want to get involved in our community here in Morgan Hill. They recently provided new shoes for kids at the Boys and Girls Club, as well as are working with the Edward Boss Prado Foundation on handing out shoes. And their most recent December event is working with foster children that have been identified by the Morgan Hill Unified School District. And so they will be finding ways to help those foster children this month, as a matter of fact. And so they have indicated support in a few different areas, one being fire and one being police. And so they've asked for what are some of the equipment needs that each of our safety departments have. In addition to that, they're looking for ways in which they can directly benefit the youth in our community. Ways in which they've helped youth in other communities, so sometimes it's tagging along already existing events, think National Night Out, or just creating new events that would directly benefit our community members. We don't have any specific ones identified at this time, but have asked us for ideas, and they're not looking for notoriety. They're not looking for advertising, but really just to benefit our community, especially since so many of the workers there at Sioux Palace live here in the community. And there were a lot of questions that went back and forth on this item. So we just wanted to make it clear as a reminder that the council, the staff were bound by state laws that prohibit, unethical behavior. We have a donation policy and it outlines donations and gifts. Getting companies to participate in the community and contribute locally is not only good for the community and the company, but also for the employees to feel part of the community. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. Okay. First I wanted to thank Sioux Palace for their donation and their interest in supporting the city. We certainly have a robust history, I will say, and it sounds like business ahead, but I take this as them wanting to do the right thing by the community and move forward together with us. And knowing we both have our respective roles as Christina has said, and I'm looking to see, look forward to their donations, and I'm hoping that they will consider for recreation programs for kids, maybe some of our pre-K education, even some investment maybe in the teen center that we have over at the YMCA. And I know that they have a safe place for LGBTQ youth. So some ideas that I wanted to share as we're looking at donations going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Spring, do you have any more questions?
Yes, I do. I had submitted them prior to the meeting, but I just got them prior to this meeting, so I couldn't really digest the answers. And they're all really related to. Well, let me start with a quick. When is it a gift and when is something a donation?
Well, a gift is something that. From the policy perspective, from city policy perspective, is something for the benefit of the cities or individuals. But donations is something that you want to publicize and you want something to be for something. not for individuals.
And there's a reason why I asked. So we have two policies, one for gifts, one for donations. Staff report primarily talks about donations, but it also implies, well, it could be a monetary donation, which is the same as a gift. In my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, I'm looking at legal advice here. But this is important to understand because then you need to know, well, which policy applies, right? So what are we talking about here? Gifts or donations?
We talk about donations because, I'm sorry, go ahead, Council, City Attorney.
Yeah,
Mr. Larkin, you may go ahead.
Our gift policy applies when somebody donates something for the benefit of our city teammates versus a benefit to the public. That's a donation. So when somebody donates something, Shoe Palace is talking about making donations that will be for the benefit of our residents versus a gift, which would be for the benefit of the city teammates.
So that's exactly my point. So if where I'm getting confused, Mr. Larkin, if they make a donation for our police department, those are employees of the city.
Right.
So in my opinion, that's a gift.
A gift would be a donation. If they bring donuts to the police department for the officers to eat, that's a gift. If they're bringing equipment so that the officers will use to serve the public, then that's a donation. That's the distinction.
What if they bring a check for $500?
Then if they bring a check for $500, it better be a donation that's going to be going for the benefit of the public, because we don't take cash gifts to city teammates.
Okay. Do you understand that someone like me easily gets confused? What is it? What we're talking about? And the reason I bring it up, I work in the corporate world where every year around Christmas time they send us an email and say, "Do not accept any gifts from anyone, no matter what." Right? To be extremely careful for obvious reasons. Right? If a provider gives you something, even just takes out for a dinner or a donut, you might then prefer that provider over another, and that might not be legal. So I don't know how it is for cities, but that's a concern that probably you have as well from a city attorney, right?
Absolutely. And so under state law, any gift, well, I'll talk about state law and then our policy. Under state law, any gift we receive that's over $50 has to be reported, and we're not allowed to receive gifts. Last I checked, it was $450, but it may have gone up to $500, but we're not allowed to receive gifts over that under state law. Under our local policy for our city teammates, we're not allowed to receive personal gifts at all. So if somebody, if I get a box of See's candy at Christmas time, I either have to return that or I just have to put it up on the front counter and make it available to anyone. And that's typically what I'll do. If it's a perishable item, that I get at Christmas time, and I don't think it's worth returning because it's perishable, I'll put it up on the front counter and it's available to anyone. And that's what our policy says. We don't accept personal gifts. Donations are a different story. Donations to, not giving tax advice, but in general, donations to public entities are tax deductible. So we do receive donations of both cash and materials that are from companies that want to provide those. You may recall a couple of years ago we received electric vehicles from Tropos, which is a company here in town, and those types of things are not unusual for us to receive. It's really just a question of whether or not it's ultimately up to. It's ultimately the council who is the recipient of the gifts, and so the question here is at least for this particular circumstance, does the council want to delegate that authority to the city manager rather than having that come to you each time that Shoe Palace wants to make a donation?
Yeah, we haven't had a deep discussion on how to best handle this for a while. And I will make a recommendation later on that we review our policies, maybe as part of the goal setting workshop. The part I'm concerned about is when you get donations, and those can be financial donations, where I struggle to see the difference to a gift from someone within our community, whether it's a business or an individual that has a special interest, right? And to create goodwill because he or she or they have some pending projects coming up that then possibly might influence decision-making process, even if it's just happening in an unconscious way. But it's hard for me to imagine that someone gives money away without wanting something, and then you have the danger of that quid pro quo issue that is illegal, right? So to what extent really does that apply here? We know Shoe Palace has projects coming up. And how do we make sure this does not influence the decision-making process in any way, form, or shape?
So council member, you, and I think, Mr. Larkin mentioned that this is something that, and you said that we could talk about this in the future. However, this item is just to delegate the authority to the city manager. This item does not talk about the policy of gift giving and who can and cannot receive. So I would ask you to please focus your questions to specifically the question of the delegating the authority to the city manager.
I understand. I understand that you would like me to do that, but my concerns go beyond that.
I understand that, but that's not germane to tonight's item.
Well, it
If
will
I
be
could
soon.
just jump in on a couple of points. So I just want to clarify one item. Shoe Palace is now owned by JD Sports. And so Marchot Investments does have projects that will come forward, but those are separate. So it's not one and the same. And then secondly, I just want to reiterate the fact that, whether it's a gift, whether it's a donation, all of us up here, my leadership team, we're all bound by ethical rules. And as a matter of fact, we're going to be bringing forward the poster that you're very familiar. It's been a while signing about what our ethics policies are. And so I just want to remind the community of that as well. And every 2 years we do ethics training. And so that Michelle, as a matter of fact, our city clerk just sent out the reminders. And so that training goes into a lot of what Council Member Spring is talking about, of what is right and what is wrong. And so any sort of donation, we're not just going to open-handedly accept, but we would, of course, review any sort of donation. There are donations we would not want. I'm not saying from Shoe Palace, but just in general, things have been presented to the city where it does not make sense for the city to become the owner of whatever it might be. We may be given gifts that we have to, reject. Thank you, but no thank you. So just know that any sort of donation, because we do receive things up to 5,000 that don't come before the council, but we scrutinize what we receive before we actually accept it. So I just want the council to be rest assured with those items.
And before you continue, I just want to mention, I saw some students get up. If there's any students that have to leave, please feel free to go ahead and get up and go ahead and go. If there's anyone left. Councilman Spring.
Thank you. I don't see the timer, but I hopefully still have a few seconds. My input is tied to it because if we're not clear on our policies and stand behind the policies and think we have the right policies in place, I am not inclined to delegate the authority beyond the $5,000 to you as city manager. That's where I'm coming from. So for me, this is connected, and I hope you understand that. So because of that reason, I won't be able to support this because the policies are not clear, they're not specific enough. I looked at them briefly after 5 o'clock tonight. I couldn't study them and ask more questions. But I think that's worth doing it in January if time permitting.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Council Member. Any other questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
May I ask the city manager a couple of questions?
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Routinely, we delegate many things to you. It comes before the council, and this is not the first time we've delegated things to you. What is your process when things come before you? Let's take this specific one. What is your process? Because I I know that you're not going to make this decision alone. You have a staff, including the city attorney, that's at your disposal. So if you have any concerns or questions, you bring in this staff to help you make this decision. Am I kind of correct, or you help me? What is your process?
Yeah, you're right. There's not a decision that, moves forward in the city that is done by oneself, whether it be development services decision or decision related to donations. And yes, in regards to donations, even for donations that are up to 5,000, so less than 5,000, some that were presented to us, the first thing that I do is I share it with our finance director and our city attorney, and we look at the municipal code, and then we also look at our administrative policies, and then review it with the necessary departments, in this case, police and fire were the initial ones. And, and so we reviewed to determine whether or not it makes sense for the city to accept them, whether or not it is within the parameters of the policies that do exist and so forth. This item is being brought forward for streamlining purposes because Shoe Palace in this case wants to provide more than $5,000, and just due to the timeline and schedule of bringing items forward to council, we thought it would make sense to ask for that direction and then just report back, kind of like we do on the contracts between 25,000 and 60,000.
Thank you. So we've you mentioned 25,000, 60,000. We've given you authority, signing authority to that amount. So the council has faith in you to make those types of big decisions, and we have faith in you to bring it to your staff for discernment on that. So I just wanted to clarify that because again, this is somewhat to me a routine, and I feel that it's good to bring it before the council, but it's more of a routine. That's why it was on this consent calendar. So that's the end of my questions.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, any other questions? Seeing none, I'll ask if there's any members of the public wishing to address us on this item.
Looks like it.
Okay.
I have no hands up on Zoom.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Joe Baranowski. I think the best way to, as Councilmember Spring noted, ethics is somewhat about how things look, not about what you expect people to do. It's about establishing trust with the community. That's why private businesses, as he said, have extreme caution and extreme walled off policies. So this would be simple. I mean, I'm sure that it's much appreciated that a company significant millions of dollars worth, multi-millions of dollars worth of business sitting in front of the city, not coming. It's sitting in front of the city now. The permits are filed. So there's not an urgency to accept donations. So, and not just for one company. The policy should be no donations will be accepted while there's an open permit of business in front of the city. I'm sure Shoe Palace can put their donations in escrow and in a year or two when those issues have come before the planning commission and potentially the city council. And there's absolutely no question that they're trying to win influence. Which, let's be clear here. There's a track record. The principals of this organization have tried successfully to influence how the city conducts business. Right? I'm not going to go through the timeline, but it's well documented. So I think I appreciate very much this organization, the jobs they bring, the principals and entities associated with whether it's called Shoe Palace or their parent company now, or any other company or any other business that has open permits in front of the city. Just ask them kindly to defer their contributions until those business matters are settled. That's how you would win the public trust in this community. Thank you.
And I do now have a hand up on Zoom. We'll call Aiden. Unfortunately, Aiden hasn't run the update, so it won't allow me to let them speak without promoting them to a panelist. Yes, so they would have to log out, run the update and log back in if they want.
So, Aiden, if you can hear me, if you can, log in and log out, or do you have to, would they have to run the update?
Just to log out, run the update and then log back in. I can also promote them as a panelist.
Let's not do that, but let's go ahead and give them the opportunity and then we'll close public comment. And if they can do that by the time we finish this item, then we'll allow them to speak afterwards.
Alternatively, Aiden, if that's not something you feel up to doing right now, you can email your public comment in. The address is on the front page of the agenda, and it is also ccpubliccomment@morganhill.ca.gov.
Okay, so with that, I will go ahead and temporarily close public comment and open it for discussion or action from my colleagues. Councilmember McKay.
Okay, I see a couple issues here. One is a policy issue, which we're obviously not going to be able to sort out tonight. But I think the second issue to me is one of trust. I think that, I might be guilty of trusting people. I like to think my glass is 3/4 full. And I've learned to trust the people that work at the city hall. I've worked with them for 12 years. I find them to be the best of character. I find them to be very upfront, honest. I think that's where we start. They are going to do the right thing. You can look around the city, you can see the results of very good work. And I can tell you that if they were not trustworthy, they would be doing all kinds of things that we may never find out about. We have a really good city staff. We have a great set of policies to make sure that work gets done in a certain way. Second thing there is that, quite frankly, if they tried to get away with something, they'd get caught eventually. And there's no good reason to take that kind of risk when all you have to do is do the right thing. And I think that our city staff has been doing the right thing. I think they will continue to do the right thing. I see no reason to. It was made clear that the Marchand family, who has projects under consideration, and Shoe Palace are two separate entities. And I'd like to make sure that we understand that. So with that, I propose that we authorize the city manager to accept donations from Shoe Palace.
Is that a motion?
That was the motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second discussion, Councilmember Spring.
Yeah, so to my colleagues, it is a policy discussion because this is a change to our policy that has been put in place on February 12th, 1996, where it says $5,000 or more, it has to come to the city council. And I'd like to, this has nothing to do with trust the city manager or the city man. So for the past, since 1996, this policy has been in place. And tonight, for this one company, we want to change the policy that has been in place since 1996. To me, that is the wrong approach. Either we adjust the policy first and then apply it to everyone and have the discussion, or we do it just for this one company only as proposed tonight, but it is a change to the policy in place. So I hear over and over again, don't talk about policy. I'm talking about policy that we have in place. Prior council in 1996 put in place. You sent it to me at 5 o'clock tonight. So it's the wrong order for me. That's why tonight has nothing to do with me not trusting you or anyone in the city. But I'd like to look at the policy first, make changes to the policy if it's appropriate, and then it's a done deal, right? versus just doing it in a piecemeal approach, right? So if that's not the process we're going to do, for tonight, I will vote no. It has nothing to do with me not trusting you. It's just, with me, we should look at the policy first before we just do this one change. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you, Councilmember Spring. Councilmember Branches Beltran.
Thanks, Mayor. Are we able to accept the one donation of 5,000 and take this back? It is a policy question and we should look at our policy and review it. And I think we should do that with our new team. And is that not something that we could do?
That's not germane to this item.
Well, couldn't we accept, there's only a $5,000.
I don't even know, is there a donation on the table right now? There is, okay, so. Okay, go ahead, please restate your
So
question.
I'm just saying, would we be able to, I mean, it says they're looking at agreements between 25,000 and 65. Can we accept the $5,000 donation and move this policy to discussion as it should be? As my colleague has raised some really great points that we should have that discussion.
To answer the question, so their first approach was to police and to fire to identify equipment that's of need. And so they're about 6,000 to 7,000 each. I'm meeting with them, they want to do more, and so that's why we're bringing it forward. I mean, we could have had an item that just said, accept donations of XYZ equipment for police and fire.
So we wanted to keep it open. Okay, understand. All right.
The policy says that we can accept up to $5,000. So I would, I guess, make a substitute motion that we accept that amount and then we bring this forward to have discussion over of the policy.
Okay, we have a substitute motion on the floor. Is there a second? Okay, that motion dies for lack of a second. Any further discussion, Councilmember Martinez Beltran?
I guess I'll ask my colleague, are you just not wanting to accept any of the donation? Is that it? The reason
Councilmember, I'm going to have to ask you to please ask your questions through the chair.
Can we ask Councilmember Spring? I'd like to understand why he was not in support of that.
Well, I believe if the Councilmember wanted to support your motion, he would have seconded it. I don't think it's appropriate for you to ask him why or why not he supports it, any specific, unless he would like to. I don't want to put him to respond. Yes. Okay. Then I'll let you go ahead and do that.
So the policy in place is that any donation over $5,000 has to be approved by city council. That's the current policy in place that has been in place since 1996.
Yes.
This tonight before us is a change to that policy. So that's why it becomes a discussion of the policy as well. And my take is let's first review the policy that is old and see if it's still accurate and compare it also to the gift policy that also has some flaws, in my opinion, and probably needs some updates because it doesn't mention businesses, for example. And I'd like to clear that up. And then as part of that discussion, we could up the amount in the policy, right? That would be the right decision, the right order. For me, it's the wrong order.
Okay. Councilmember Martinez, that's fine. Did I answer your question?
Yes, no. I'm trying to understand.
Okay, thank you.
Would we be, I guess where I'm confused is, would we be not following the policy if we accepted the $5,000? Am I missing that?
Isn't $5,000?
Yeah, so the policy allows for donations to come to the staff that are up to 5,000. Anything more than 5,000 would come to the council for acceptance.
Okay. So I guess we would just have to deny it for it to go back, and then you could say we can accept up to $5,000. We need to review our policy, or we're going to review our policy and we'll accept nothing at this time.
Or it comes to council.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But
I'm going to have to ask my colleagues, please not to discuss amongst yourselves and please address through the chair. Just trying to keep the decorum of the meeting. Thank you.
Does staff have any suggestion hearing the discussion that we've been having?
I'll modify my motion.
I know you're coming up, but the council members. That's it. Okay, the council member still has time and she still has the floor. So I'm gonna ask you to ask your questions or your discussion rather than ask staff to give you ideas. I think this is appropriate time for you to either make another motion.
Yeah, I am
or
simply
make a
trying
comment on.
to some kind of consensus with my colleagues on what is the appropriate next action.
Okay.
And I think at this moment, I am looking for any help from anyone to help me do that.
Okay, that's
Right now, there's, I believe, unless I misheard it, there's a motion on the floor. If the council doesn't want to delegate authority to staff to accept the donations, then the next step would be for staff to bring any donations of more than $5,000 to the council. But there could also be a discussion of the policy at a future meeting to modify what that threshold is. So that's that would happen if the motion that's on the floor doesn't pass.
Mr. Larkin.
Okay, so then I guess from what he said, I would move that we do not accept the donation and instead the council.
And that's a substitute motion.
That's correct.
So is there a second to that substitute motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Councilmember McKay, you did want to do you want to speak on this or do you want to wait till after the vote to make a comment?
Well, I don't know if I can make a substitute to a substitute motion. But I will tell you that either I will do that or will tell you that I would like to modify my motion to, and which would also include the statement that this council, the city council, has the ability to modify these policies.
So Councilmember McKay, unfortunately, you cannot modify your motion because that's not the motion that's before us now. Right now before us is the substitute motion.
Okay, can I make a substitute motion at this point?
And we are stretching my ability because we don't follow Robert's Rule of Orders. I'm going to ask the city attorney, is there, what's the next motion above substitute motion? We have two substitute motions.
I mean, I'll probably go back and forth on substitute motions all night, but I don't think that that's the intent of the rules. So I would say if you can't amend the motion by substitution to just reverse if there's a small change to the substitute motion, then that would probably be not just reversing. You can't just remake your original motion, I guess would be the answer to that.
That's not the question. The council member wants to make a motion above Councilmember Martinez Beltran's substitute motion.
My recommendation would be to see if there's a friendly amendment that can be made, if it's a change to the motion that's on the table.
Much. McKay, would you like to make a friendly amendment to the motion that's on the table?
Sure. Now, my friendly motion would be based on the fact that we do have the authority to override policy. What I would like to say is that we, in this instant, grant the authority to the city manager to accept the donations with the understanding that this policy needs to be revisited because the only thing we need to add to the current policy is unless otherwise granted, to city manager or some other entity.
I'm not sure, but I think you're conflating your original motion because I'm going to ask Councilmember to please restate your motion.
Was to, I'm looking at what the action is. We're being asked. I'm sorry, Mayor. I am trying to just have a policy discussion.
I believe her original motion was to accept a donation of $5,000 and then have this come back. But I think the issue is that the donation is more than $5,000.
Okay.
So I was saying to deny accepting the donation at this point. So defer is probably a better word, accepting the donation at this point until we are able to have the policy discussion.
So if I could,
that would be my substitute.
If I can clarify what I believe, because there isn't an action to accept a donation, the action is to delegate authority. And my understanding was that the substitute motion, Councilmember Martinez Beltran substitute motion was to not delegate authority. The friendly amendment was,
Yes, that was my motion. You're right.
the friendly amendment was to delegate the authority, but direct the policy to come back. And my understanding is that's not being accepted.
Okay, so knowing that, Councilman McKay, would you like to add a friendly amendment to that? Rather than
I think
what you stated prior?
he made his friendly amendment. It wasn't accepted. I think.
Now let it go to vote. Okay, you're back up. All right. So this,
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry, Councilmember Martinez, you have your,
I'm done. That's my substitute motion.
it is a second. Any further discussion on the substitute motion? Mayor Pro Tem.
Mike,
Microphone.
I got it.
I'm sorry, rephrase the substitute motion.
To deny the delegation of authority to the city manager to accept the donations over $5,000 until we are able to have a policy discussion.
So, can I ask a question of the city attorney?
Oh, yes, you can. It is your time.
Mr. Larkin,
Yes.
in the current number 18 agenda item, is there anything that's illegal or unethical in that you can see that would be problematic?
No, it's not unusual for councils to delegate that authority to their city manager, the authority to accept donations.
But considering the conversation at the dais that you could see, so is there anything that's something that would be of concern to you as our city attorney?
There are potentially donations that would be concerning. The policy itself is not concerning. I mean, there absolutely, if there were certain types of donations that could be concerning, but those are the types of donations that we wouldn't accept.
Okay, so the 5,000 that's on the table this evening is not as a concern to you?
No, and as I said earlier, I'm not certain that there is a $5,000 donation that's on the table. I think there is an interest in donating more than 5,000. And so that's the reason this is before you, but I'm not concerned about accepting the types of donations that have been proposed by Shoe Palace.
And if I can add to what Mr. Larkin said, the donations that have been discussed are police and fire equipment that have been identified by our police chief and our fire chief that would benefit the departments, items that have not been budgeted for, but would help in public safety. And they're about 7,000 each for police and for fire, totaling about 14,000.
And as a reminder, if those were military equipment, then that would absolutely come to council for a policy decision.
So this would be a part of that.
Correct. That would be the first set of donations, if you will,
Okay.
that they would want to provide. Yes,
So this would benefit the city tremendously.
absolutely.
Okay. You answered my question. Thank you very much.
Okay. With that, then I will go ahead and ask, we're going to take a vote on the substitute motion. All in favor of the substitute motion? Does anyone need to have that restated
No, I have a question
on your motion?
on the item. When
Well, we're about to vote on your motion right now, Councilmember. Do you have a question on the motion?
I have a question on some of the items that my colleague brought up.
Again, I don't want to have a back and forth between
No,
the,
I'm not asking him.
I understand, but do you have a question regarding your motion? Because we're about to vote on it.
No, I'm
Okay, so
clear on my.
let's go ahead and have the vote on the motion. So all in favor of the substitute motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
That motion does not pass with Councilman McKay, myself, and the Mayor Pro Tem voting in the negative. So now that brings us to the original motion, and I'm not sure whom has already spoken, and doesn't have any more time, so I'm going to head and say, forget that, and we'll start over. And if there's anyone who has any discussion on the motion on the table, I will take it now.
As a member of the public.
The public comment was already open and closed.
I made the motion, but what I'd like to do is make a slight revision to my motion if that is allowable.
That is allowable as long as the seconder, and I don't remember who seconded. I'll ask the city.
It was Mr. Bordeaux.
seconded it.
Okay, so you can,
As I had mentioned earlier, what I'd like to do is go ahead and authorize the city manager to accept the donations, but we do need to revisit the policy. I do believe it's a minor adjustment in the policy that would make it much easier for this to move forward in the future or to deny, to comment on this. That would be my motion.
and to make it cleaner, I think you can bring that up as future agenda items. If you would like.
I was going to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
One way or another, I want it to be in the record that I do believe, again, I agree, we should revisit this, but I think that right now, this is the time to take advantage of an opportunity. Thank you.
So to be clear, is the motion on the table currently to approve the recommended action, and then under future business items, somebody will request the policy be revisited?
I'm going to look to the motioner. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that's fine with me. Yeah, but it will be done.
That's the motion. And is that okay with the second?
That is okay.
Okay, so with that, we'll have discussion on the motion.
Mayor,
Yes.
apologize for interrupting you. I want to declare one thing. We have a member of the public on Zoom who has their hand up to speak.
Oh, are they back?
It is not the same person. It is a new person who raised their hand after you paused the closed session. So I just wanted to clarify that
Yeah.
for that purpose, public comment is closed.
So the comment is closed. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and further discussion, Councilmember Martinez Beltran, you were first, and then Councilmember Spring.
Thank you. I would like to understand, we're talking about $5,000. No, it's not $5,000. What exactly is the donation amount? Is it this 20, I mean, this is a huge range, $25,000 to $60,000. Are we saying right now, yes, we're accepting $25,000 to $60,000, and at some point down the road, we'll look at the policy? What are we doing?
So with this action tonight, it would delegate the authority to accept the donation after proper review above what's currently allowed, which is 5,000. And what's noted is that we will come back and provide you with information, as we do with contracts, on what has been accepted.
And how much,
Lynn, is there anything else you would add to that?
how much are we accepting? We don't have an amount of how much we're accepting.
No, there's no amount that has been listed.
So right now, it's basically, it's a threshold. Policy said that the council will accept 5,000 or more, but. with
But we're
this-
not talking about
Yes.
that.
So with this authority, Christina basically has the authority to accept donation over 5,000 and report back to the council on a quarterly basis of the donation over 5,000. So there's no limit, basically.
However much. That's what we're saying right now.
Yes, that's how much. But annual donation had to be vetted by, of course, in the trustworthy mind of the Christina and her team.
Okay, all right. I would also like to know, when is this item coming to council that we talked about, the militarization equipment?
So that's new legislation. And so if we are to accept any donations that are military equipment, we would have to bring that to council for approval. And so there are no proposed items that fall under that requirement.
When do we expect that would happen?
We don't have, go ahead, Don.
As I say, the council did review that military equipment policy several months ago and approved certain types of equipment that's not truly military equipment, but it's considered military equipment under the law. If we were to acquire any new equipment, then it would come back at that time.
We're not planning to acquire any at this point, or we don't have any donations on the table.
Okay, so what would this donation, we keep hearing about, oh, well, we need this for public safety and for the police. What are we using this money for, that this unspecified amount of money would be used for what?
Specific police and fire equipment that have been identified by our chiefs.
Is that equipment, this military equipment?
Don mentioned that just to make sure that council knew that it wasn't military equipment.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is equipment for police department to use that would be used by our officers and public safety in their normal everyday roles.
Forget the firefighters.
Yeah. The firefighters, pardon me. Thanks. In their everyday roles. Okay. Now, I would like to ask, is this time is of the essence, things are blowing up, we need this right now, this equipment? Or is this something that we could have, you know, a month, we're gonna have our workshop and discuss policy in a month? Is this like a month we could wait to have that discussion, or are things gonna fall apart in Morgan Hill if we don't have this?
If it were emergency, we would be buying the equipment because it's, you know, we would find, I mean, right? So it's not urgent emergency, but it would be things that would be very valuable to have.
Okay, so if one were not to support overriding our full policy to take an unspecified amount of money, hypothetically, they would not be putting the police department or the fire department in jeopardy. Correct. Thank you.
Oh, I finished? Okay. Okay, Alderman Spring, you're next.
Yeah, I have my hand up before, thank you. I just want to clarify, if we were to reject the proposal tonight, we're just going back to the policy that has been in place for the past 26 years. It has nothing to do about ethics or so on. I just want to make that very clear. And it's important to mention. So the policy has served the city well for 26 years, right? And now we're asked to make a change for one business to that policy without knowing specifics. We don't know the amount. We don't know, is it $500,000? Is it $1 million? It just says more than $5,000. It doesn't say what it is for. It says sponsorships. Is a sponsorship a gift or not, right? Those are legal questions that we should discuss. And we didn't have time to do that. I got the input just at 5:00 tonight. I also suspect that my colleagues have not seen the policies in place as they apply for gifts and or donations, because I can tell that by the questions asked. So I think by denying tonight, all it will happen once there is a specific donation provided, but we need staff would come to city council and we'll make a decision as we always have. That's the only impact denial tonight would have. And it would lead, the other option is to table tonight, right? And say, hey, let's first talk about the discussion next month, and then come back thereafter, if possible, right? That's another way of doing it. By rejecting tonight, we're not losing anything. We're just going back to the policy that has served this council and the prior council for 26 years. That's it. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Spring. And I just want to clarify to the people in the audience and people that are watching, I went up to ask the city clerk to make sure that the person who had called in before wasn't using somebody else's Zoom so that they could really speak, but the city clerk did say that it was not the case. So that's why I just wanted to clarify for everybody. So with that, there's no more discussion? On your motion. Okay. Well, this is on the motion. So it is a clarifying question on, not on the motion, what's the clarifying question?
Has this never been asked before?
Well, the question on the table is to delegate authority to the city manager for anything over $5,000 for the Shoe Palace specifically.
Yeah.
So I would have to say no.
Okay. Well, in this case, it would be exception to the $5,000 rule. That's it.
Which is why it's before us.
Right.
Okay.
Have a substitute motion, please. A new substitute motion.
Okay.
I'd like to move that we table this till after our policy discussion.
Okay. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. There's a motion is second. Any further discussion?
I just would like to mention that, although there's no emergency in getting the equipment to our police and fire, anytime that we can help our departments out with public safety, I think there is an urgency. I think the quicker we can do that, the better we can help them and help our community. So I just wanted to share that. I disagree with my colleague that there's no emergency.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Okay, no further discussion then. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
No, so this is
Okay.
substitution.
I believe you're aware that that was for the substitute motion, correct?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. No,
Okay. Let me, okay, everybody, please. Okay, this is on the motion to table. I should have clarified. This is on the motion to table this item to a date uncertain. So with that understanding, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
nay.
Nay. So that motion was not passed. The substitute motion is not passed with myself, Councilmember McKay, and Mayor Pro Tem in voting in the negative. Now we will vote on the motion at hand. Does anyone need to have that motion restated? Okay, with that, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Mr. McKay, did you vote? I didn't hear your voice. You voted aye. Okay, so that motion carries with Councilmember Spring and Councilmember Martinez Beltran voting in the negative. We are now going to take what time is it? Let's take at least just a 10-minute break because I'm going to call my daughter and say goodnight because I told her I was going to kiss her tonight and I was wrong. So we'll take a 10-minute break and reconvene. Thank you. I'm at the meeting. See John coming back. Coming back. Okay, there you go. All right, welcome back, everyone. We will now enter into our public hearings, and we'll start with item 19, which is the nuisance ordinance amending the zoning code to update accessory dwelling unit provisions to comply with state law and making minor corrections to various provisions except from the CEQA under section 15061. And I see Mr. Brzezowski is coming up to the podium, so I believe you'll be giving us this report.
Good evening, Adam Piskowski, Principal Planner with the Long Range Plan Division. So the item before you tonight is a city initiated code amendment to modify the various code provisions within our code, which implements minor amendments due to clerical errors and inconsistencies within Title 18, and to amend the ADU chapter to reflect changes in state ADU law regarding setbacks and heights for accessory dwelling units. The Planning Commission held a public hearing regarding this item on November 8th, 2022, and recommended approval of the city initiated ordinance amendment. And so on the following slides, I'll summarize the changes that are proposed. So this first page shows all the sections of our code that have minor clerical errors. So these are sections that have a single word that was omitted, or a wrong reference to another section, or made references to planning commission instead of city council. So these were very minor areas. The rest of the presentation will get to a little bit more specifics on other sections that were had much more bigger changes to them. So here this shows table 18.44-2, which is our minimum accessory structure setbacks. So for accessory structures, proposed changes is to do a couple changes here. One is to remove the covered patios. That's because patios are defined as not having walls or a roof. Hence, there's no such thing as a covered patio in our ordinance code. Next is to clarify setbacks for decks and to allow roof structures such as sheds with a height of 8 feet or less to have a side and rear setback of 3 feet. Next is a subsection C of section 18.52.030, which is our measurement of fence and wall height. And so this is to clarify that the section only applies to fences or walls that are not located on a retaining wall, and to not be interpreted where we measure from the bottom of the retaining wall. So be measured from the top of the retaining wall to the top of the fence. Section 1864.060A is our general landscape requirement. And this is to allow turf for active recreation to be consistent with our other chapter regarding landscaping, which is our water conservation chapter in 18.148. So now we're going to start talking about accessory dwelling units, ADUs. So it's within section 1856.040, this is our lot coverage exception. So it's our design exceptions. And it's to clarify that ADUs up to 850 square feet in size are exempt from lot coverage requirements as required by state law. And then in section 1884.020, this was a very specific requirement. It's more meant for staff. But it's required by state law that we put it in our code that we require any demolition permits for a detached garage that is to be replaced with an ADU, that the city staff reviews them at the same time concurrently. So this slide's a little bit long-winded, but it's all referenced in the same section for our site and design standards for accessory dwelling units. So ADUs that are created within an existing accessory structure may be expanded by up to 150 square feet for ingress and egress only. And mainly that is for allowing things such as a staircase to reach a second story ADU. We are now required to have side and rear setbacks for an attached ADU to be 4 feet. And then also for attached ADUs, if a property owner cannot place an ADU within their side, rear, or front setbacks, then we have to allow, this applies to all jurisdictions in California, that we have to allow up to 800 square feet to be permitted within the front setback. But this only pertains to attached ADU. So if it has to go in the front setback, it has to be attached to the main primary dwelling. And then another new requirement is that attached ADU shall be limited to 25 feet in height. And then my next bullet point has to do with heights for detached ADUs that are within 1.5 miles of a major transit stop. And so that they are limited to 18 feet in height, and then they get an additional 2 feet for the roof pitch. And then lastly on this slide, a detached ADU on a lot with a multifamily, multi-story dwelling shall be limited to 18 feet in height. And so all these height requirements were just passed by new bills that go into effect in a month. The changes on this slide pertain to code compliance that requested this and was approved or recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. The first is section 1872.020 of our parking and loading chapter. It is proposed to be amended to require the continued use and availability of parking and loading areas. So this change will allow the enforcement of not allowing required parking areas to be used for the sale, lease, display, repair, advertising, or storage of trailers, boats, campers, and mobile homes, or etc. And then section 1872.040B is to reintroduce the prohibition of parking of automobiles in the front yard landscaping of a property. And then this last slide on our changes is to clarify for temporary use permits, where there's a cash deposit for a temporary use permit, that the director has approval to determine what that cash deposit shall be. Right now, the code limits it to having the developer or the property owner to determine what that amount is without really any type of approval, and they could have just a minimum of $500. So this is specifying that the director shall approve what that amount is based on the information that's provided by the project. So the recommendation from the planning commission is to open and close the public hearing, waive the reading of the ordinance amendment, and introduce the ordinance amendment. And the findings for approving this code amendment is listed on our slide here. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Bzowski. Is there any questions from my colleagues? Councilmember Marquez Beltran and Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Matt. Can you tell me what the timeline is in replacing a garage? You talked about they have to be concurrent. What is that? There's got to be some kind of flexibility there, right? What?
So this is if someone wants to demolish a detached garage and replace it with an ADU. So ADU law allows for any accessory structure to be replaced with an ADU. And so if I'm guessing this came about because some cities process a demolition permit for a garage first, hence the garage is gone, and now they can't build an ADU in that same footprint. And so now the requirement is that it must be issued concurrently.
And does it have to be in the same exact footprint?
Depending on the specific circumstances, it all depends on what is being done on that property. There's lots of variations on with this new ADU law.
I mean, if somebody's building an ADU, is there not a degree of flexibility that you permit them once they've demolished the grandfathered structure?
With what the state is requiring now, no, there is no flexibility. It mainly is if it's a garage that was built like within setbacks somewhere where typically nowadays we would not allow an ADU. And they just want to replace that garage with an ADU. Everyone has to do it concurrently, and they'll be able to do it within that same footprint.
Okay, but concurrently, does that mean within 60 days of each other, within 90 days, 6 months? What does that mean?
On the same day.
On the same day. Wow, okay. You said that if it goes in front, it has to be attached. What is the minimum setback for the front?
So the first thing is, it's if they cannot place an ADU in their rear or side yard setbacks.
That has to be exhausted first.
Right. And it has to be where they can't fit 800 square feet. State law require or allows up to 850 square feet. But for this particular issue, it's for some reason they specified 800 square feet. So the first they have to see if they can fit 800 square feet either in their side or rear property. And then if they can't, then we would have to allow it within their front yard.
Is there a minimum setback there?
No, there is not.
Okay. And then ADUs are only permitted to be single story.
Up to 25 feet for an attached ADU. And then for detached, depending on the location, it would be 18 feet.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Spring.
Thank you, Mayor. 25 feet equate to 2 levels or more?
Yes, it would be 2 levels.
Levels maximum. And where a detached 18 feet would still be 2 levels?
It would most likely be 1 level because you have the roof pitch as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Spring.
Thank you for your report. So just from my understanding, all the changes proposed are related to make sure that we're in compliance with Senate Bill 897, Assembly Bill 2221.
Yes, on the accessory dwelling units.
Are there other changes proposed tonight that have nothing to do with that?
Yes, there was the changes. Anything that is not related to ADU does not pertain to those bills. So there's one on measurement of fences on retaining walls. There's the one about the turf. There was we had a bunch of minor amendments to where there's just missing words. There's just a cleanup ordinance. So it's including the ADUs as well as this other mixture of cleanups throughout the zoning code.
Okay, because I read the staff report, and the staff report just primarily talks about changes needed due to those bills, right? So that were consistent. But your slide kind of pointed out that there's other changes and corrections.
So I think
for tonight.
the best way that to kind of summarize the changes besides the PowerPoint in the staff report is the listing from A to, gosh, I guess it goes to O of all of the different changes. And so it lays out which are ADU related and which are sort of cleanups that we, you know, bring to the council on average annually.
Yeah, the presentation actually was clearer than the staff report, because the staff report doesn't distinguish. I thought it was all related to ADU mistakenly. But my question was, if we have those clerical errors, it's a generic question, not just for tonight, and then somehow something gets approved, right? And there's a clerical error. Does then something get incorrectly approved?
Yeah, Ron might want to pop on, but typically these are the sort of things that are pretty minor and would not, you know, impact an approval or disapproval. Don, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, these are primarily they're inconsistencies in the code or typographical errors. They're not the only real substantive changes are to the ADU requirements, so they shouldn't impact any existing approvals or any pending applications.
Right, I was just a little bit caught off kind of how many clerical services. There's probably a lot more floating around. One has to assume, and I just wonder.
The code is voluminous. I mean, it's pages upon pages upon pages, you know, and as much as, you know, we want everything to be absolutely perfect, which is what we strive for, there's bound to be some level of typos and inconsistencies, and we try to find all those. And then Adam here combines them all, consolidates them all. They're insignificant, and then we bring them forward annually.
Right, I understand, but what are we doing to minimize that they even happen?
I mean, our code goes back many years, so we work very hard to minimize clerical errors as we go. Most of these that we're finding are very old. We don't use those sections of the code very often, so when we go to use them, then we find the errors and we fix them.
Okay. And my understanding is that this was reviewed by our planning commission, probably much more in detail than we're going to do that tonight. And you're nodding, so that ends my other question. Yeah, I'm not going to go and ask more detailed questions. I think I'm clear on what we're doing here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I have a question. If no one else has any questions. No, he already went. Okay, so thank you for that. Regarding the ADU and the added 150 square feet of ingress or egress, is that above and beyond the 850 square feet that they would need without having the and I'll get the exact wording to be exempt from lot coverage requirements? So in other words, if they were at 850, but they needed 150 for egress and ingress, you could go above the 850 and not have to worry about the requirements for the lot. Is that correct? Correct. I love the state. Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. I'll ask now if there's any members of the public wishing to address us on this item.
I have no speaker cards and there are no hands up on Zoom.
Okay, well, okay, great. Thank you very much. Now I'll open it up for council discussion and or action. Actually, I will stop you because it is a public hearing, so I have to open the public hearing officially. So I am now opening the public hearing, seeing that there's no members of the public wishing to address this. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and now I'll open it up for public discussion and action. Councilmember Spring, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was going to make a motion to waive the first and second reading of the ordinance as proposed.
Second. Because you want to waive the reading of the ordinance. It doesn't say second, so I want to make sure that's, well, not on the,
I'm looking at it.
First and second.
it says it right here. I'm looking right here. Oh, there you go. Okay, so waive the first and second reading of the ordinance. Thank you.
I'm still awake, so.
Hey, I'm reading what I have in front of me.
The same.
Okay, so there's a motion. There's a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And then I'll make another motion to introduce the ordinance amendment.
And I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion in a second. Okay, I'll ask the deputy city, I always say deputy, the city clerk to please introduce the ordinance and call the roll.
An ordinance of the city of Morgan, an ordinance of the city council of the city of Morgan Hill amending various code provisions within Title 18 zoning of the municipal code of the city of Morgan Hill, implementing minor amendments to declare clerical errors, inconsistencies, and updates to accessory dwelling unit provisions to comply with state law. Mayor Constantine.
Aye.
Council members Spring.
Aye.
Burgioli. Martinez Beltran.
Aye.
McKay.
Aye.
All right, that motion carries. You know, those are impromptu roll call votes. I don't have to announce that. So now it moves to other business, item 20, which is to authorize initiation of negotiation with Dub Baseball and USA BMX for development at Butterfield Park site.
And this item will be presented by Public Services Director Chris Gioni via Zoom.
There you are. Good evening, Mr. Gioni.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Tonight's item is to, as you just said, Mayor, is to present the council with the opportunity to approve direct negotiations on partnership / lease agreements with two organizations for the Butterfield Park site. In 2019, the city did a concept design for the park, and that was to support a grant application with the state, and we did not receive that grant application. We tried again the following year and again didn't receive the grant application, not because our application wasn't great, but because of the demographic makeup of the city. But through that process, we found multiple partners that were interested in supporting development park. So earlier this year, we put out a request for letters of interest for partners that would be willing to support the park development. And we received 2 letters of interest, which we shared with the council in August. After those initial letters of interest came in, we did some really basic space design and came up with a plan that we have before the council today. I'm going to pull that up to share. I'm hoping, or not. Actually, I don't think I'm going to be able to pull it up. For some reason, I'm not able to share my.
You can email it to me and I can share it.
And Chris, would you like Michelle to pull up from the?
Yeah, it's just the first
packet?
attachment in the report.
Yeah, so right after the staff report is the Butterfield concept graphic. Michelle, if you wouldn't mind.
I'll get it right now.
Yeah, so sorry about that. While Michelle pulls it up, I'll keep moving forward. So we kind of built this process into 3 parts. The first part was accepting the letters of interest. And then after moving forward with the 2 groups that supported us, the next step was to determine if both those groups and city park facilities could fit on the site. The graphic that you see before you is the concept design that came up with. It's not very dissimilar to the previous park graphic that was presented for the grant funding. However, there are some significant changes, as if we move forward with these partnerships, the facilities on the left side and right side, the BMX track and the baseball field, would be potentially constructed by I would say nonprofit partners, and would be a public-private partnership per se with our non-private partners. So what we have found by doing this exercise is there is potentially enough space for both facilities. So On the left side, far left, you'll see a retention basin that's existing that would remain. Then just to the right of the retention facility, you'll see the BMX track. And then you would see the shared space and city space in the center. And then to the right would be the baseball field. So through this exercise, we've determined that there is enough space for both partners and the city to have space at the site. So the next step now would be to for the council to direct staff to negotiate potential agreements with both partners, and that's where we're at tonight. So if you do look at the city space, though, there is a little it's a little smaller public park space per se, which would be the center, which could still have a playground, picnic areas, those sort of things for the community. But then both of the facilities, if built by the nonprofit partners, would they'd be required to have public access elements, but that's to be achieved through the agreements, and that exact access would come back to the council for review when we bring those potential agreements forward. It should be noted that this is about an 8-acre site that is within the city. The city owns 20 acres just to the south of this, so it would be at the bottom of this graphic. That property is within the county, but intended for a future park space as well. So although there could be fewer city facilities on this initial 8 acres, by the time the city would likely have funding to build out more facilities anyways, we would hope that the property to the south would be available for us to build out. We did get some public comments on the traffic impacts, and we have done a traffic analysis in 2019. That would be the review of that would be updated through the development of the partnership agreements, and would come back to council as well with the updated proposed agreements. So what's before the council tonight, and I think Michelle, you can stop sharing if you want, but what's before the council tonight is just directing staff to proceed with negotiating these agreements, and then hopefully early next year, city staff would be back with proposed agreements for the council to review. That concludes my staff report. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, do any of my colleagues have any questions for Mr. Gioni? Councilman Spring?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gioni. Couple of questions. So what you just showed on that slide, and maybe that's a good one to keep up probably for the discussion to follow. So are we expecting that those two organizations you might want to enter into an agreement with, that they would help pay for either of their utilities, parks, whatever it's called?
Yes, absolutely. The concept we have, but that would be negotiated. But the concept we have is the partners, they would be getting space in some sort of lease partner agreement, would provide public access, but pay for the construction of those facilities, basically on the left and the right, as well as we would look to partner to pay for shared components like parking, restrooms, those sort of things.
So I was reading a proposal, but I didn't really see anywhere that they agreed to pay for all that, and how much the cost is for either group. So what is the estimate that would cost for each one, and what budgets do those groups have that we know of?
So I don't have the exact budget for each of the groups. I know the baseball group, it could be millions of dollars. The BMX track could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we believe the organizations would have those at different points. There could be some tiered development, like with the baseball fields, that build the field first, and then batting cages and other things as we move forward. But that's what we believe they had, and we believe, building out the the center area, just for the shared components in the center, could be over $1 million if everything's built at once with playground, picnic area, bathrooms, and parking.
So that was not part of the request for proposals to discuss the cost?
It was, and they have shared their what they believe, but since they would likely be constructing these, that could be shared in the next step for sure. It would be part of the agreement, but the exact dollar amount has not been determined.
So what would you guess the ballpark would cost?
It would be, the ball field side would be millions of dollars.
Millions as a 2 million or 8 millions?
I think somewhere between, those are very good numbers. Those are what we're estimating right now, would be between that, but it'd be depending on what type of costs are very not stable right now at the moment, especially for park facilities, as well as what other amenities go in. Are there lights? You could be spending $1 million in just lights. If you have lights to start with, no lights to start with for ball field lights, batting cages, those sort of things. But I think the number you just presented, between 2 and 8 million, is a good estimate.
Okay, would it be fair to say that 2.5 million is probably the minimum and unlikely to be enough?
I would not say that 2.5 million is not enough for a first phase.
And the reason the reason I'm asking, right, that's kind of the amount that they have earmarked so far, but it sounds like if they really want everything they're envisioned, they would have to raise a lot more money than they have earmarked. So where would that money come from? Or they just would only use, I don't know how they could use that if they can't pay for everything.
Well, so that would be part of the agreement. If you can't fulfill the development, then it doesn't move forward. The great part I forgot to mention about kind of this partnership and the design we've come up with is this could all be built in phases, right? The city components could be built, just that small park space, and a portion of that could be built and open to our community. But the BMX side could happen first, the baseball side could happen first. So it could be phased and built. So while that's a valid risk, I don't see it as a big risk because the property is just sitting there vacant anyway.
Well, the risk is right. We're kind of dangling nice ice cream in front of us, knowing we don't have the money from the city to ever build that or even more. And if those organizations don't have the money either, then that's an issue, right? And then we can negotiate as much as we want, but at the end of the day, it's about the money as well, right? And,
yeah, absolutely.
Correct, right. So then I think I also read that the baseball team kind of implied that they would be getting a building for interior training. I don't see that anywhere here.
Oh, sorry. The big blue block there is a building. I didn't speak much of it. We don't believe it will be in the initial build out. It would be much farther down the road just because of the costs that we've talked about.
But is that what that would be used for? The blue building?
Yes. I mean, that's the proposal. I will say that the current proposals are letters of interest, and we'd be developing that scope through the agreement that would come back to you at the council.
Okay, so the 2.5 million wouldn't even include that piece that they kind of almost assume it would be there in their letter.
I think that's their long-term plan.
Well, that wasn't quite clear to me what is long-term plan and what is phase one, right? And maybe is that something you will discuss with those groups and then later come back so that we better understand what is a phased approach versus the end result?
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be outlined in the agreement, like what would be the minimums and then what would be future phases.
Those are the only two groups you would talk to. There's no one else in the same field.
Those are the two groups that responded with letters of interest. We are always open to talking with different groups. I've talked to different baseball groups. I don't know that there are other BMX groups, but yeah.
And I know you hinted it, but the part in the middle, this, those little parks, the city are you proposing to go ahead regardless of what happens to the left and to the right, or would you propose that we discuss that once those agreements are clear and hopefully in place one day?
Yes, this is a space planning concept exercise. There'd be much more work and council approval on any city park space as we go forward.
And for that, what you're showing us here, what's in the middle, the city-owned parts, I'm not sure if the blue buildings are city-owned or not.
No, the blue building is a proposed building for the baseball group. And that could be used as additional parking until if that doesn't get developed, or it could be used in a different way.
But for the other ones that are not belonging to either side, that are kind of the city-owned pieces, for those we would have funding, or we would yet to find funding?
We have limited funding available in our CIP over the next years, including dollars for next year. So we would have limited, but the council would have to make decisions on what the priority is for items within there, and that would come back to council.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Spring, Councilman McKay.
Yeah. Hi, Chris. Thank you very much for getting this far and bringing this to us. Couple basic questions. Well, all we're doing is really giving you the authority to proceed with negotiations. There's non-binding negotiations, right? It's basically find out where we can go. You're basically doing the legwork. And then when you get to the point where there could be something solidified and a commitment made, then it would come back to the council at that point. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so at this point, everything is fluid, dynamic. Things could change dramatically. We just don't know. But at this point, if we did approve you to proceed with this, then things could start to crystallize. And so what we're seeing right now could theoretically change dramatically by the time it comes back to this council. But the main thing is we're giving you the authority to go ahead, do the fact finding, bushes, make sure it's the best deal for the city and the community. And that's really what we're doing at this point, right?
That's correct. I just make one comment that I do not think it will change significantly. We've put a lot of effort into getting the detail on paper for something we think works in concept. So I don't think the design would change significantly, but how things are operated and the phasing is something that would that we would come back with the proposals.
Okay, good. And there will be no dollar commitments, property commitments made by the city until it comes back to council.
Correct.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, do any of my colleagues have any other questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chris, for the presentation. There's a total of 20 acres total, and we're going to only use the north 8 acres. Am I correct, Chris?
No, actually, the 8 acres that we are building on, that's 8 acres, or that we have shown you on the concept, that's 8 acres. South of that 8 acres is another rounded up to 20 acres. I don't have it on the diagram. It doesn't show the full piece, but there's 20 acres that we bought potentially for more ball fields down the road that could be built, or other park facilities.
But you mentioned that this is in the county and not the city. Am I correct?
The 8 acres that you see the plan on is within the city.
But the other portion is not.
Yes, and we've been actively talking with the county on use of that 20 acres. I'm really we've talked about similar uses. We've done overflow parking on the county property next to the sports center. That would likely be possible. And then I've been talking to the county about trails that the community could use, inexpensive trails we could use on the 20 acres. So that'd be an added benefit that we could construct on the 20 acres before fully developing it down the road. Some limited uses that aren't really changing the property.
They are open to overflow parking on that piece.
We have used that before. As long as we're not changing the property, we do have control of the property.
Got it. What do we have in our SIP funding available for this project going forward? So we're going to try and get partners to cover X amount of the costs, most of the costs, I'm going to just say, for the lack of knowing specifics right now. But what do we have? What's our share that we're willing to put into this? And what do we have?
Well, I think, sorry, I had the number right in front of me and I just dropped it. Give me 1 second. So as I pull the number up, there's two things. There's the number we have budgeted, and then the number we're willing to put in. That number that we're willing to put in is going to be dependent on the council approving that. We have design dollars this fiscal year, and then over the next 4 years, we have approximately $4 million for use at this park site to develop it.
Do you mind repeating that?
$4 million over the next 4 years. It is primarily funded at the end of the 4 years, but the council could make some changes and shift some of that forward, if a limited amount of that forward, if we wanted to support moving forward more quickly on that, on some elements of it. In our CIP, we really planned to develop a small portion of the site with the city, with city dollars. Even if there's no partners. With that said, that $4 million with costs will not get us very far in developing that site. We'd have a much bigger benefit partnering with our private partners.
So thank you. That's segueing into my next question is, so I remember that you bringing this to the council a couple of years ago, for approval. And so you went to these partners, and it looks like the interest is very, very high for this location for these two particular groups. And would you say that interest is, would you agree with me? It's very high, or is it mediocre right now? What's the level of interest? I mean, do they really want this thing and they'll do almost anything to get it?
Yes, that's extremely high. And I think both organizations are professional level organizations. Both are professional level organizations, but also have local community members driving this.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay, do any of my colleagues have any questions? Councilmember Martinez Beltran.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thanks, Chris, for your report. First of all, I wanted to ask about, would you please put the map back up? Thank you. I wanted to ask about the egress. Can you talk to me about right there on Butterfield? Is that the only area that we can enter the site?
That will be the primary entrance. We potentially will have some maybe an emergency exit, but that will be the entrance for vehicles.
So there's only one.
Correct. And yes.
I mean, have we looked at that's the overpass? So I'm just a little bit. Have we done any analysis on that?
Yes. We did an analysis in 2019, and actually in 2019, the entry was farther to the west, kind of where you see that view, that piece, and we were able to figure out that we could potentially move it farther to the right and even improve that. So we have done analysis internally and externally.
Would that require any adjustments to the street?
Correct. And, yes,
Yes, we would have to change the street.
we'd have to, modify the sidewalk to allow entry. We would get further into that design, as we move forward with design, but, no, it would not require a major reconfiguration of the street.
Okay, thank you. That's what I'm getting at. Okay, and then can you talk more on page 20 about the compatibility and how it complements the future development? You talked about their direct use with the public. It says that the last bullet point, compatibility with future development of park space on the site and adjacent site.
Yeah, it's kind of consistent with our past thoughts for the site with more ball fields. So if we have a partner helping to build one ball field, if we build more ball fields in the future, that is very compatible. The parking could be further expanded to the south, and then the trail connections and existing facilities would be compatible. The BMX space, it was planned as a pump track, which is different and is less competitive, but with a partner, it would still be compatible. And even the uses, this will come more in the agreements, but the uses are very complementary. Both uses are, we've had letters on regional uses, but the major tournaments or major bike races aren't happening every weekend. They're happening a few times a year. So we would obviously work to make sure that the scheduling of those kind of work together. So they're not overlapping with each other. And we've talked to the groups about that already, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. And then the regular use, there would be, plenty of space for people to come on a regular basis.
Okay, so BMX, we think would also complement that. That was the one I was more concerned about. When we're talking about, budget wise, you said we had 4 million that we would invest over 4 years. What's their budget?
So I think the baseball group has noted they have $2.5 million to start and are committed to funding more. The BMX group, I do not know the exact dollars that they're going to be putting in initially, but it's tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars. The development of the BMX site is not going to be as costly as a baseball field, for sure. And then both groups have talked about phased approaches, right? So maybe you don't have lights to start, but lights are added down the road, just like we've done on additional fields at the Outdoor Sports Center, right? So that would be some of the things we've talked about.
Would there be some required investment, time identified that there would be an investment made by these organizations? After a year, they invest so much, after 2 years.
Yeah, we could tie that. We could definitely tie that. This item is for if the council thinks that's something that's appropriate, I think that's appropriate to include.
Okay. I also want to talk about the public access, and I noticed that the Parks and Rec reviewed that. They asked for the maximum amount of public access. I also want to ensure that we're doing that on weekends and nights. Have you talked with our partners about that?
I think we have not talked specifically, but I think that's something we can always shoot for, right? So
I just want to make sure that our kids are able to access that on weekends and nights, because that's when they're going to go. So if they're taking, one of them said that they use 5 days a week. So I just want to ensure that that's available.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk about the general park elements, and is that something that we would envision to stay there permanently? Are all of these permanent structures? Do we think at some point the BMX would become a ball field, or the ball field would become a BMX as you move down the site?
No, these are all permanent. Everything. The city components, we would be spending considerable amounts of money, and I would assume they would be permanent.
Okay. Would it be easy to switch to something else if one of them doesn't work?
It would be easier to switch the BMX track to something else than the ball field.
Okay.
But it'd still be expensive.
Okay, I just feel like it's very vague. It talks about in here it's developed for private use with public access. Can you talk about the public access? I feel like we haven't really talked about that. And I want to be very clear going into this because I feel like our our sports complex really lacks there.
So what we will do for the council as a city is we will try and negotiate the most public access possible. We'll come and bring what we get to the council to review. I can't commit to right now. We haven't started the formal negotiations. That's what we're asking the council to provide for us tonight.
Well, if in those negotiations, if you could ask for weekends, nights, and reasonable public access, that would be great. Okay. And then also, as far as the facilities, the restroom, are they helping to build that parking lot?
So all that would be negotiated in the agreements. But our hope is that the shared facilities would be paid for by all three entities.
Okay, within the training facility, I want to talk a little bit about the organizations that we identified are both not dominated by girls. They certainly, I'm sure, do participate, but I would really like to see that we have it's a gender fluid environment for our kids so that we have girls participating as much as we have boys participating, giving them 50% of the residents. How are we going to do that? I looked at Dub. And they talk about, they have baseball / softball, but I don't really see any softball. There's not much discussion about it. How are we working? And I'd like to make sure that we work with spirit and make sure that there's some consensus there so that we're using that area for our girls as well. And I know I've had actually softball organizations come to me specifically asking to develop that site. I think I've had them speak with you. So can you please talk about that?
So the first part, I think we can take that as comments for the negotiations. But the first part is the initial proposal is to develop the field as a multi-use field, not a baseball field. So it would be a softball / baseball field, which involves like portable mounds, those sort of things. So you can use it for softball at any time. So I think the rest of that would have to go through. I hear you loud and clear, and it'd have to be part of the next step of the process.
So I just want to make sure that we're asking them and that we're inviting those softball organizations to work with us. And if there are any girl, BMX foundations, that we do that as well. And that also brings me to the training facility. I played softball for years. You're going to have to make lots of adjustments. I would like for us to also be able, the batting cages to be set up for softball and have the same equipment available for girls to go in and have slow pitch and all of that.
I hear you loud and clear. Understood.
Great. My time is up. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and ask if there's any members of the public wishing to address us on this item.
Yes, sir. Our first speaker is Nick Valencia.
There you go. Good evening, everybody. My name is Nick Valencia. I've been working with Chris and another parent here. I would be the potential operator of the BMX portion of the site. And just hearing some of the concerns, just like Chris said, we hear you loud and clear. The biggest thing, and we got the same thing from the Parks and Rec Commission, the biggest thing for us is, and it will get flushed out a little bit later, is the schedule and kind of how the place operates day to day, week to week. But make no mistake about it, that being embedded in the community is pivotal for our success, because sure, we may have some people that travel from South Bay, East Bay that come, but it is absolutely critical task number one to engage the immediate community, kids. The good thing about BMX is it gets multi-generational. If let's say you go, like you mentioned, the girl that comes out and does it, her little brother is only going to sit and watch it for so long before he hops up. We have what are called striders and balance bikes. So basically kids that don't actually ride yet, they are involved in every facet of the racing as well. So there's a lot of stuff that you'll see kind of down the line that will definitely please you. Myself, I come from a BMX background. I worked in City of San Jose Parks and Rec for about 12 years. Worked on a lot of big projects there. The Lake Cunningham Regional Skate Park that now has turned into an action sports park. They have a bunch of mountain bike trails and things that they fabricated there. Did a lot of work there. And then I also have ridden myself, and now I find myself doing a lot of the admin work and kind of advocating and kind of building up these sites in different places in the Bay Area. Met with Chris and Mike. They kind of suckered me in a couple of years ago and said they wanted to kind of get me going and see if we can get something going out here. It's been good working with Dub. I can only speak for myself. Dub's got a bit bigger of a vision and definitely a higher price tag, whereas BMX is a little bit easier to do. Kind of when you hear the numbers from the baseball side, millions of dollars. BMX is a little bit different because you can get in there for $100,000 relatively easy, because essentially at the end of the day, it's dirt. It does do great, but at the end of the day, like you were mentioning, if it didn't work out, unfortunately, we don't ever want to see that, but you could just flatten it out and it just goes back to what it was. We don't envision that happening. The ridership that's around this area and the ridership that was traveling from Morgan Hill is kind of how it became a, hey, there's 40 or 50 people traveling from there. Maybe that's something that we should look into. So there's a lot of strong points, and I am here along with Mike, and we have one other person from USA BMX that's online. So if you guys have any questions, feel free, and we're here for you.
Thank you, Mr. Valencia. Next speaker.
Our next speaker is Doug Muirhead.
Good evening, council members and staff. For the record, my name is Doug Muirhead. I live in Morgan Hill. This item was presented to the PRC within the last several months. And at that time, I pointed out what to me is a significant difference between the diagram that you saw tonight and the one that you saw a year or more ago. The one that preceded this one had a building that was a combination of refreshment stand and a community meeting room. And I really care about us having more public spaces for community members to get together. As you know, the library offers its programs rooms. They're very oversubscribed. Part of it is due to fairly low cost. You can also get space at the Community and Cultural Center, but I'm told that that's somewhat more expensive. And for some of these small organizations, you know, almost anything is more than they can afford. So I'm just here. I picked up litter on the slopes of the Butterfield overpass this afternoon. So I was looking down on this field. It was a nice sunny day. It just really felt really good. So I'm pleased with what Chris has managed to, or Mr. Guion has managed to put together with some very willing partners. But I just want to put a little reminder for you folks that, you know, if it's possible, let's start including some gathering spots for our residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Muirhead.
Our next and last speaker is Mike Favona. And as of right now, I have no hands up on Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. I had a speech written, but I'm going to scrap that at this point. 3 minutes. I'm a parent. I'm a resident here in Morgan Hill. I'm a member of USA BMX. I race myself because of my son. You know, there's actually, you'd be surprised, and to answer one of the questions about how eager are we to get this started, there are literally hundreds of kids in this area and the surrounding cities waiting for a place to race. Their track was closed this year that they raced at. So we have parents with shovels ready to go literally tomorrow, right? As soon as we get this moving forward. But all jokes aside, you know, this is a sport very different than any other sports we have here in, you know, baseball, soccer. As Nick mentioned, you could have a 2-year-old on a strider followed by their older sibling, followed by their parent, followed by their grandparent, you know, in the same event at the same place at the same time. This is all about community, which is what I love about Morgan Hill and what I'm sure many of us and everybody here loves about Morgan Hill. It's almost like this is just meant to be, right? So to address some of the other, you know, questions, we became part of this through the community events that Nick puts on at the previous track that we used to race at. he would have events where all of the community has open time to go try out the sport, free of charge. Usually it was like a weekly thing where he would actually have his team there to help. He would ask regulars to come and help out, and kind of help people learn about what the sport's all about, actually help them physically on the track too. And that brought us in, it brought so many families. It brought some of the families here in Morgan Hill who actually have a BMX team, just so you guys know, into the sport, right? So this is all about community. It's something also that runs all year. So it's not like kids can join at a certain point, like they have tryouts or something, and it's all year round. They could actually enter the sport at any point in that year too. So girls, boys, there's actually girls divisions, and you'd be surprised at how dominant they are in the sport. So, everything that you've heard and I've heard throughout this conversation, really plays to BMX. And if you haven't had a chance, it's been a while, but I had sent a video to, I think, all of you. It was a 3-minute clip. Go to usabmx.com and check them out. But we really ask for your support in moving this forward. Like I said, it would be a huge benefit to Morgan Hill. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment. And just to answer your question, I wouldn't be surprised how dominant women are because I have a little girl. So with that, I'm going to ask.
Not competitive.
I'll ask my colleagues if there's any discussion or action. Councilmember Marquez Beltran.
I have both. I wanted to confirm with our public utility services director, there is no investment at this point. We are simply authorizing for you to negotiate with the partners.
That's correct. The investment is outlined in the staff report is our investment of time, which we do believe we have adequate resources to work through over the next several months.
Okay. And when we do this, this will only be limited to these 8 acres and does not involve the 20 acres to the south. Of course, I understand what you're saying, that we're looking to the future, but this is only for the 8 acres. Is that right?
For any permanent improvements, as I mentioned, I would really like to have some trail, like a walking trail around the existing site, but no permanent improvements. That would be more of like an unimproved trail.
Okay. Okay. So everything's on this side. Okay. Well, hearing all that, and I would like to move that we do authorize the staff to pursue the lease partnership agreements with Dub Baseball and USA BMX for development of portions of the Butterfield Park site. I will not repeat some of the points that I feel are critical to our negotiation with that. I think that they've been heard, and if not, you know exactly where to find me. But I am really excited for this. I think that this is a new opportunity for our kids. I know that I've many parents who their kids are in BMX. I would be excited to see the girls do their racing. I would like to ask BMX, I would love to have a tour of wherever it is that you think that you guys do some of this activity. I would love to come and see that. I will ask Dub, doesn't look like they're here, but I would also like to understand more about how they're working with both genders and how that works, and what they've got in mind for their facilities as well. But I'm definitely in support of doing this. I hope that Dub will work with the softball aficionados in our team. I hope that you will also with other groups that are looking to partner up with you however they can. And hopefully we can make this work. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Okay, and Mayor Pro Tem is going to second that one. And any further discussion? Did you raise your hand? Oh, I thought you were thinking something away.
No, I did it before. I thought you had something to say.
That's what I was saying.
Thank you. Yeah, so I will support that as well. I always think we need to do more for our youth, and if we get them to do meaningful things, they stay out of trouble. And I think that is an important piece, and then being part of teams and being responsible teaches everyone good lessons early on. Yeah, I like what the thoughts from Mr. Moorhead as well. I know our funds are limited, but if there are ways to provide space for the broader community, that's always a good thing. And maybe it's just an outdoor space to start out with, but that's better than nothing. Mr. Keone, I wish you best of luck with the negotiations. Funding will be key, right? It's nice to dream, but you know, if the money's not there, it won't happen. And so we have to really look at those organizations willing to help. Don't look at the city to pay for it. Look at how you can help raise the funds needed, right, to make it happen. So those were my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councilmember McKay, did you want to say?
Well, I want to echo what my fellow council members have said so far. I think that this is something I learned from former council member Gordon Siebert, and that is that our strength is really going to be in our public-private partnerships. Not only do we have great volunteerism in the community, but we also have organizations that are willing to step forward and help us become what we can be. A great example is our inclusive park. Yeah, many thought that would never happen, and it did because everybody came together and worked on it. We can't even maintain that with the help of the public. So, you know, I think we've developed a great relationship and hopefully a great reputation out there that we will work with you. Mike, I think we've exchanged emails. There's another young gentleman, I forget his name, who has sent me some emails we exchanged about doing just this very thing, building a BMX course. And I just want everybody in the community and the universe out there to understand that all you have to do is reach out to us and start a conversation. And if we can't initiate something ourselves, we'll point you in the right direction. But the main thing is that this community will make things happen when it works with city government. We've got a great track record, and I'm looking forward to great success. This can be another feather in our cap. Morgan Hill is getting me known more and more as a sports-oriented destination, and you know, just keep bring more and more. I think this is something that will help the broader community. So thank you very much.
Okay, and with that, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? And motion carries unanimously. That moves us to item 21, and to introduce an ordinance updating the city water waste provisions categorically exempt from CEQA under section 15307.
Good evening, council members and mayor. Hi. This evening I'll be presenting on item number 21, amendments to the City of Morgan Hill Water Waste Ordinance. So there's two main updates that we're proposing to the water waste ordinance. One is to prohibit new private water wells. And the second one is to adopt the state ban on watering of non-functional or decorative turf into the local municipal code. We'll go over both of those. So first, the ban on new private water wells. The water waste ordinance will prohibit new water wells, which will eliminate cross connections, eliminate new sources of untracked water use, and also ensure the use of the city's advanced metering infrastructure or AMI system to inform residents of leaks and provide automated reporting of water waste to the city. And then the second one is the ban on watering of non-functional turf. I'll give you a little bit of background to start. So May 24, 2022, the State Water Board adopted a statewide emergency water conservation regulation that bans the use of potable or drinkable water on decorative or non-functional grass at commercial, institutional, and industrial properties, also known as CII properties. And that includes areas of non-functional turf that are under the Homeowners Association control. And then on September 13th, 2022, The Valley Water Board of Directors amended their water waste enforcement ordinance to allow Valley Water to enforce the state ban on watering of non-functional or decorative turf on all CII properties, commercial, industrial, institutional. And that brings us to today, the local ban on watering of non-functional turf. So we have state, regional, and this is sort of the last piece. The proposed amendments to the city's water waste ordinance will update Morgan Hill's local regulations to also ban watering of non-functional turf. This will allow for regional consistency, which was requested by Valley Water. And it will allow us, the city, to cite watering of non-functional turf under our own local code, rather than depending on Valley Water to do that work for us. The city water waste ordinance update will do what the state ban does. It will ban the use of potable or drinkable water on decorative or non-functional grass at commercial, industrial, institutional properties, including the non-functional turf under homeowner association control. And then the important part of this, the highlighted underlined portion of that slide is we're also proposing to ban the watering of non-functional turf in common areas of mobile home parks, apartment, condominium, and townhome complexes. And the reason for that is we want to apply the ban equitably across all property types in the city so that all decorative turf, regardless of who you are, cannot be watered. So, as you know, climate change requires California communities to use water more wisely and to prepare for more frequent and persistent periods of limited water. Therefore, the proposed ban on new private water wells and on watering of non-functional turf will be written into the permanent water conservation requirements and will be effective at all times, regardless of our drought status. And that will help to prevent people from reverting back to watering of decorative turf once the drought is declared over, if we see that day. And then to help with turf conversion, the city is going to continue to encourage the community to take advantage of the Valley Water Rebate Program. And that's it. Questions?
Great. Thank you, Ms. Carruthers. Appreciate that. Any questions from my colleagues? Councilmember Spring.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation, and looking forward to that. But the one thing that I just wanted to clarify, so in the slides, it seems more clear that you distinguish between that would apply so any sources of drinking water being used. But if a business had, I don't know if they had a gray water system or something like that, do we? I assume we still would allow watering then, right?
Gray water, and someday if we have recyclable water.
So where is that distinction in the ordinance? It might be in there, but I couldn't find it.
There is a section that talks about recycled water. And I believe there's also one on gray water, but I would have to find it.
Because the staff report is just referring to water. It doesn't distinguish.
Yeah.
That was did say.
It's
so in the ordinance, on the second page, under wasting of water and drought emergencies for applicability, A3 says the provisions of this chapter do not apply to the use of recycled water with the exception of subsection B1 of this section. So it scopes that out there.
Thank you.
Where do you see that? I'm sorry, I'm trying to follow you.
Yes, so in the ordinance, it's on the second page under 13.04.330, wasting of water and drought emergencies under A, applicability. And it's number 3, I think is what you're referring to.
The provisions of this chapter do not apply to the use of recycled water, with the exception of subsection B1 of this section.
And I would just add to that under section A1, it refers specifically to potable water. So a gray water system would also be allowed.
Okay, so is recycled water in the ordinance the same as gray water?
No, recycled water is water that comes, the purple pipe water that would be returned from the treatment plant. Gray water is water that's somebody processes directly on site.
Yeah, I'm looking for the piece where it says that the gray water irrigation system explicitly are allowed, and then kind of
gray water
it
is
might be in there, but I can't see it.
It's in the section that I just quoted, A1. This only applies to potable water. Gray water is not potable water.
That's two above the one I read. So Don is referring to the provisions of this chapter apply to any person in the use of any potable water in the city.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that, but that wasn't clear to me. I think your answer is clearer than the ordinance. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilmember Martinez Beltran?
Thank you, Mayor. So when you talk about turf, this is all grass and all homes are no longer allowed to be watered with drinking water. Well, not single family homes. Single family homes can keep their turf areas. They're not considered non-functional. They're considered part of the single family home lot. And so they're restricted to water use times and days for their lawns, but they're not included in this particular restriction. So we're just talking about common areas. So under the CII property, so commercial, industrial, institutional. So the commercial piece would include common areas of multifamily and so let's stop there. Common areas of multifamily. Yeah. There are all along Butterfield. There are 3-story on St. Cecilia and Diana. Tons of these 3-story townhomes. And there is lawn, which is the only space that there is for children to play outside. That is no longer allowed to be watered. So under the state ban, the homeowner associations are allowed to determine what's functional and non-functional. And I would say that it would work the same way for the multifamily. So we determine which spaces are community use spaces, and they can deem those as functional. We've been working with different properties on what should and should not be deemed functional. And in addition, we included really detailed definitions of what's functional and non-functional. And so to give you an idea of what the non-functional turf sort of entails, non-functional is streetscape turf, which is located along private or public streets, and the strips on either side of the street, along streetscape sidewalks, along driveways and parking lots. It's like the pieces that people don't use. It's just decorative. And then the last piece of that is turf that's solely ornamental. Okay. So this is only for decorative. So if you have these lawn areas outside, because there's nowhere to play in these developments we're building, there's just driveways where kids are supposed to play when there's no cars and then hopefully not get hit. Right. It's dangerous because you also brought up mobile homes, and there's so much concrete in mobile home parks. The only opportunity to have some green, it really seems like, I wonder about the equity in this policy, I guess. But I understand the initiative behind it. And then I guess I'll also ask, gray water, if you have your own gray water, you can go ahead and do that. If you don't, are you able to do that? There used to be where you could water by bucket or something. We still have that, yeah. You can still water by bucket. Okay. But with a nozzle with the automatic shut off is fine. Okay. And then regarding the mobile home comment, the intent would be to prohibit watering of the decorative grass in front of the mobile home sign or the strips along the sidewalks where people are living. You've got a mobile home and they may have a very small patch of grass that could be deemed as functional because people hang out on that grass.
So the intent is not to get rid of all the grass in the city. It's really to focus on the decorative pieces that can be converted to low water use landscape. Right. And I just hope that we as the city, anywhere, any of our affordable housing, that will make sure that we are being flexible with that, because kids use very small spaces sometimes. I also just wanted to ask about, you talked about the turf conversion program with Valley Water. Can you tell me a little bit more about that so that everybody can hear?
Yeah,
And encourage them to do that.
Yeah, the turf conversion program is a program that's administered by Valley Water, and we actually have an agreement with them to help with the rebate. So our community actually gets a higher rebate than other communities. Valley Water will give $2 per square foot of landscape conversion for single family homes up to $1,000. And then they have a $10,000 cap on commercial. And for the city's portion, we donate, or we provide a rebate of $1 per square foot up to 1,000. So in Valley Water is up to 3,000. So to give you an idea of how that program is being used, we have been pushing it a lot as part of our outreach campaign for the current drought. And so between January and June of 2022, we had 14 different properties utilize the program for rebates. They were all single family home, but between those 14 properties, there was a total of 15,532 square feet of landscape converted. So it is utilized by our community.
Thank you for all that detail. Fantastic job tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. So you mentioned the commercial, industrial, and common areas of the multifamily units, and again, specifying non-functional areas, greenery areas. So I know I pass by a lot of these places and they're still watering. And it's so sad to see, because we know how valuable our water is, but yet they're watering these areas. How are you getting the messages out to them now? Because it seems we've been telling, we've been putting this message out, 411 and other means, but it's not getting to these people.
Yeah. So we have, the city is outfitted with an advanced metering system, or AMI, and these meters plug into a water smart system. And so we actually have staff that looks at the highest users. So when we detect someone that has a leak, the system will detect patterns in people's water use that indicate there may be a leak at a property. And so we'll do direct outreach, targeted outreach to those people. In addition, we've been focusing mostly on the top 100 users. And so we've run this top 100 user list twice so far. And the idea is that we're trying to sort of hit the biggest targets first, and then we'll probably start to get to the smaller ones. And we did recently bring on a full-time water conservation specialist to help with that effort, and she's been doing really good work. So targeted outreach, and then of course there's our outreach campaign. We're currently working on getting some posters set up, and we post to social media and whatnot to just try to get the message out. So we really do work a lot using the AMI system and water smarts, and that's partly why the ban on private water wells will help to keep people accountable, because that's what that system does.
In addition, there's a mechanism on our website to report instances where you do see watering that isn't allowed. And so you can confidentially report that in, and then the team will look into it.
And then we can look at the AMI system and see what was being reported, which is pretty neat.
Thank you. No more questions.
And what we need are other jurisdictions to be as diligent as we are.
Yeah, one neat fact is that in October, which is our most recent data that we have for our drought conservation efforts, regionally, we've had, Valley Water is calling for a 15% savings compared to 2019. Regionally, we hit 16%. So the region's doing great. But in our city, we hit 17%. So we're doing more than our share to contribute to that savings and picking up some of the slack along the way.
As we usually do.
Yes.
So at this time, I'll go ahead and open up for public comment.
Could I ask one question, please?
Sure.
Thank you. It's more information. The water wells, the private water wells, we're not allowed, first of all, when would that happen? That there would be no new private water wells?
It would be effective immediately with adoption of this ordinance.
Okay. And does,
Just for the record, that's two questions.
no, it's an extension of the one question. And does that, are there some people that would be left if they had bought a site without water access, without that?
The ban is only on new wells. So I'm just trying to prevent the challenges that come with new wells and water conservation for the future. People who are already hooked in, there's not much I don't think we can do about it.
That's what I'm saying. If you have a property and there's no water there and your intention was to build a new water well, are you now sitting on a property that has no water access? And if you can't tap into the public utilities?
That would be implied by the water ban on, no new private water wells.
And there's no window for that to happen.
It's not currently included in this ordinance. I think Chris has something to say about that.
Mr. Gioni.
So if there was a new developed site in the city where there was not the possibility to add municipal water to the site, the city manager under the ordinance can make an exception for that, but they'd have to prove that there's no way to connect to the city's municipal water system.
Is that ongoing, Chris? Or is that for a certain amount of time?
That is ongoing. We do not believe there are very many places within the entire city where that would occur, if any at all. But if something in theory came up, that could be used.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Is there any public comment on this item?
I have no speakers in person or on Zoom.
Then I will go ahead and close public comment and open up for discussion or action. I'm getting whiplash by turning my head. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
I'd like to make a motion.
Please do.
Please do.
Would you like to waive the first and second reading of the ordinance?
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion to waive the first and second reading of the motion. Is there a second? Second. You have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? It's Mayor Martinez Beltran.
This last point of information that you gave me on the wells. I'm going to go ahead and support it, but I do wonder if there was not a way to, to have something where if you're not allowed to water, grass or whatever with your well water, but if there was some, allowing a little bit more flexibility than just saying you couldn't put in your water well. But I don't know if I'm missing something. I would think you might know more something about that, Mayor, being on Valley Water.
I don't know what you're asking, to be perfectly honest.
Many people like having their own water well and don't abuse it. And so I guess I'm just wondering if that discussion has happened.
Well water is all water because, as you are well aware,
yes,
our water comes from the ground.
Right.
So when you're using a well or you're using municipal water, it's all coming from the ground. And we don't want people to waste it in any way, shape, or form. So it has to be all encompassing. So if I'm not sure I'm asking.
They can't measure it. You're saying that seems like that's the impetus of for the.
Whether they can measure it or not, we still have to remember we're getting the water from the ground, and whether you're measuring it or not, the ordinance is put into effect so that we're not wasting the potable water that we have. All the city water comes from wells.
Right. Okay.
Maybe I'm not answering. Maybe I'm not.
You are. I'm just putting two and two together and getting my answer, but thank you. That's helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with that, I'm going to have to wear a neck brace. I'll go ahead and ask all those in favor. Aye. Opposed? That motion carried unanimously. There's one more.
So I'd like to make a motion. My screen went off on me. Motion to introduce the ordinance updating the city's waterways provisions.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll ask the city clerk to please introduce the ordinance and call the roll.
An ordinance of the city of Morgan Hill amending section 13.04.010 definitions and section 13.04.330 wasting of water and drought emergencies of chapter 13.04 water system of title 13 public services to add regulations prohibiting the use of potable water on non-functional turf and prohibiting new private water wells. Mayor Constantine.
Aye.
Council members Bourgioli,
Aye.
Spring,
Aye.
Martinez Beltran.
Yes.
Okay,
Aye.
I'm just making sure you're all.
Mention the order. And with that, well, most of my committees, they change the order to make sure we're all paying attention and not off the whatever in the Zoom. Thank you, Ms. Carruthers. Now move to item 22, which is receive the monthly budget update and October 2022 financial and investment reports. Mr. Nguyen. Oh, and while Mr. Nguyen's getting ready, I want to recognize Mr. Muirhead for helping to keep our city clean. Thank you very much, Mr. Muirhead. Mr. Nguyen.
Yes, good evening again, Mr. Mayor and council members, Dak Nguyen, Finance Director. And last item on here tonight, agenda is the our monthly budget update and the month ended October 31st financial report. Again, overview is of the presentation tonight is talk about briefly about budget update. And I also add a bullet for tonight. This month's presentation we want to talk about the investment policies and authorized investments. As we are heard recently, and another day, another investment loss related to cryptocurrency. So I just want to bring it to the council and the public of our city's investment policies. And the third bullet is that at this time on the October 31st, we do not have any budget adjustment recommended at this time. With that, we go over the city's general fund. Overall, there's no material change since the last budget update presented to council in, I believe, October 19. Both revenues and expenditures are currently tracking budget. But more specifically, I want to answer the council Matilda Bertrand's earlier question about recreation services. Recreation revenue and memberships continue to rebound, abate slowly. Revenue up about $500,000 compared to prior year. Most notably, the facility rentals, which has doubled year to date compared to prior year. However, rec revenues, currently we do not anticipate the revenue level to come back to pre-pandemic level until 2025. Another major fund of the city is the development services or Fund 206. Currently, both revenues and expenditures are currently tracking budget. Last but not least, the enterprise funds, which comprise of water and sewer funds. Water consumption through the October 31st, the community consumed about 60% less compared to prior 3-year average. Thus, the 15% water revenue stabilization rate was implemented. For sewer operations, the revenue is currently tracking budget. And this chart view is the updated general fund forecast. As you can see, with the better performance of the prior year financials, bringing our projected general forecast remain the fund long-term growth 25% through the forecast of 27-28. Investment policies, our authorized investment, the objective of investment policies is the safety, liquidity, and yield. So we always invest in something that's conserve the principal or capital, and that has most liquid, accessible easily, and third is yield. And the list of authorized investment policies is U.S. Treasury bills and notes, government-sponsored agencies such as Fannie Mae, and investment pools such as LAIF and or California Class, which the council just approved in early this summer. Overall, our investment policies is very conservative, as compared to what the state could allow, or maybe or other agencies' investment policies. The court and other agency investment, they are allowed to invest in corporate bonds or notes. Our policy does not allow that, as well as international bank or INF bonds, and definitely no cryptocurrency. And that concludes my presentation. I will have you answer the question that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. Are there any questions from my colleagues? Mayor Pro Tem?
As soon as I get my speaker on, if you could just bring up the updated general fund forecast graph. For me, I just wanted to point something out for you, to you. Yeah. So that graph, the green line, going down to the 26th percentile in, I believe, 2028, right?
Yes.
So, what do we need to do to mitigate that and bring that up well above the 26th percentile?
Make more money.
Bring more money, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, but actually, that's what I was, again, I know we have to bring in more revenue and, you know, we have a lot of developments now that, you know, are coming in and, you know, that's going to help. But what do you see, in addition to what the mayor just said, what do you see us doing to make that line go up more?
Well, but before there's several ways we could make the, the slide slope no longer going downhill. But before we go in there, just want to point out that this updated general forecast is much better than the prior months, because you look at the prior forecast, we see the 7-year or the 27-28 below the council long-term reserve goal 25%, I think at 21%. So right now, with the better performance from prior fiscal year, that brought up our forecast in the 7-year to the 26th percentile, which is remain above the city council long-term goal of 25%. With that said, there are ways that we improve the protection of the our fund forecast. One of which, like the mayor mentioned, the other one is, of course, we control our expenditures. We do that through our regular budget process, and we plan our budget based on what the city could afford. That's definitely a must. And also continue the economic development activities that our wonderful team that keep working on every day. So bring more activities, bring more jobs and companies to the city, and so we can generate more tax revenue for us.
Okay, thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you. No more questions, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Member Dunn. Councilmember Spring? Yeah, I'm sorry. Councilmember McKay, raise his hand first. No, thank you, sir. Hey, I don't have eyes in the back of my head. I can only look one way at a time. And when I turn this way, he raised his hand first. Councilmember McKay.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I understand you have a daughter, so I think you do have eyes in the back of your head.
That's my wife.
This is a time for question and comments, right? Because we're just receiving the report.
Yes, we're just receiving the report. You're absolutely right.
So what I want to say is this is going to be the last time I get to look at you from this position. And I want to thank you. Well, I want to thank you very much. And I want to thank all the staff, because there was a time a couple of years ago when we looked at that graph, that projection of our budget, and it did not look good. We pushed that out by 3, maybe 4 years. And I got to just congratulate, thank, commend everybody, city staff, your department, all departments, because there were sacrifices made across the board, and also my fellow council members and the mayor for getting us to where we are. Because I look at other cities that they just dream of having what we have right now. Not only do we have the resources, but we've developed an incredible community with the resources that we have, and we've kept this community strong through the worst of time. And so I want to thank you. And I may be looking at the back of your head from now on when you do this, but thank you very much for everything you do. Thank you, all staff members that got us here.
Thank you, Councilman McKay, and the Phillies Mutuals. I want to take the opportunity to appreciate your support to our leadership, and as well to the Priestley Moon to Finance Department and myself as well.
You only get what you deserve. Thank you.
Councilmember Spring.
Thank you. I think I know why I'm I know why I'm confused because you look over there and I think you're looking at me. Oh, seriously, I had the same issue with my colleague, Boccioli before.
I think it helped you by just calling on you. That way you'll know it's you.
Yeah, that would help.
Would do what I did.
But I second everything that my colleague just said, and you know, you're much appreciated for all you and your team do. But I do have a couple questions. One is to educate myself. What is other agencies?
Other agencies, those Fannie Mac, those like we typically purchase Fannie Mac and Fannie Mae are the main one. The agencies that purchased the U.S. residential bonds. You go, for instance, if you purchase homes and you get a mortgage, and the bankers typically sell you mortgage, but they don't hold them on their balance sheet. They typically package together and sell to those sponsor agencies, government-backed agencies.
Okay, I don't know if we're talking about the same other agency. I'm talking about the revenue category, other agency.
I'm sorry. Other agencies.
That was describing
I think
investments,
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
I have a background in finances. I know what you're talking about, but as revenue category, other agencies.
Agencies typically grants and revenue received from other agencies like such as VTA for we got the vehicle license fees from VTA as well as grant donations, etc. from other agencies, states and federal. We would categorize that as other
Got it.
agencies.
Thank you. And then the other thing I looked at was the expenditures, right? I think one thing this council always has been fairly conservative when it comes to that piece, right? And rightly so, as my colleague just mentioned. If you were to show the graph, but the trend line from 2-3 years ago and now, it's always been going downhill, but it's going downhill towards different years, right? And we actually have much improved when you compare that graph. Been doing the right thing, having said that. But when you look at the expenditures, the actual year to date compared to the previous year period, is a lot higher pretty much across the board. Why is that?
Mainly because of more programs. We have more programs this year than last year. I could name one program that we started this year is the innovative transit, as well additional environmental services program. And in the expenditures you look at right now include a lot of encumbrances. I believe close to 3 million as of October 31st versus prior year. Because some of the projects that council approved or expenditures that was contract we signed to last year, but get carried forward to this year. So as well as more successful at getting new staff recruitment. So more staff compared to prior years.
Can you do, if that were okay with you, maybe for future reports for the expenditure categories, when there is a percentage change higher than, let's say, 10% or so, 15%, that you kind of in a slide or so would kind of summarize why that is for each one of those expenditure categories?
Sure.
Doable?
Yeah, we could definitely write more analysis as a reason why the higher 10% or more increases.
Yeah. You know, I'm looking at administration 46% higher than same period last year. Community services 35% high. That those are high numbers, right? And I don't really know why.
Sure. We definitely could expand the analysis a little bit more to capture those big variances.
Yeah, that would be helpful to me at least. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Marquez Batara.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mayor, how long do you want your last item to last? I will just say thank you for everything that you do and keeping your eye one step ahead of all of us. I want to thank you for bringing up, I had reached out to Dad and Christina and said, I know better, but we don't have anything in cryptocurrency, right? So thank you for pointing that out and breaking that down for us. And I also wanted to just ask about the water and really more of a comment, just saying that I'm glad to see that we seeing the decrease in the revenues that we're having, that we were able to pass that. So because I think because of that, we are where we are. So thank you. If you want to comment on anything, you're welcome to, but that was really all I had.
Thank you.
All right. No further comment, then I will thank you very much for a positive report. And to Councilmember McKay's question, I was on this council, and Councilmember-elect Liebers will remember that that line was very ugly, and we had to make some very drastic keep some drastic measures to make sure that we remain solvent. So glad to see that line pushed further and further out into the future. And as we progress, hopefully that will continue. So with that, I'm going to ask if there's any, we'll close that item out because there's no action needed to be taken. I'll ask if there's any future agenda items.
We have an open public comment.
Oh,
We don't have
did I
any,
not?
but
I
we
did
haven't
not.
opened it.
I did not open it for public comment. Thank you very much. So I will open it now for public comment.
They're all running up right now.
Okay.
We have no public.
Then I will go ahead and close public comment. Thank you for keeping me honest. Okay, with that, I'll ask for future agenda items, and Councilmember McKay, you have a future agenda item.
Future agenda item, and also I want to mention to that, this is one time you can kick a can down the road, which is that date we dropped below the reserve line. What I want to do is bring back reviewing the gifting and donation policy. I think it's something that we talked about, and I think that in the future, that's something I think that should be reviewed. But I think
that was understood when we went that there, but thank you for reminding us. Councilmember Spring.
No, that's.
The
policies from 1991 and 1996.
Okay. I'm good. All right. All right. For the last time, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Great job.